wanted to hear, but exactly perhaps what the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, needed to fire back at the Conservatives. So, Labour will have the chance to outline what they will do if they win the next general election, which many in Liverpool now believe could be coming down the track sooner than expected. We're expecting the Shadow Chancellor's speech in the next few minutes. Let's cross to Liverpool now and join Gloria and our economics editor, Liam Halligan.
Thank you, Mark. I'm here with Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. Big speech from a woman who wants to be the country's next Chancellor. We'll bring you that live as soon as it happens, of course. Just tell us who she is. Who is Rachel Reeves?
So this time last year, Gloria, we were presenting at the Labour Party conference and the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, gave a speech which very few people noticed, but you and I noticed it because she's tried to reposition the Labour Party, didn't she? She came out in favour of much lower business rates, a key corporation tax, and we both felt that that was significant. The key thing about Rachel Reeves is that she's a former economist at the Bank of England, and at the moment she's the only senior politician in the UK who has serious experience of working inside the Bank of England. Why is that important? Because all eyes are now on our central bank, Gloria. The pound has lost a lot of value against the dollar. It went down to $1.03 overnight on Asian markets. It's now bounced back to $1.07. But a year ago, the pound was trading at $1.40.
Why is it happening, Liam?
It's happening because some people in financial markets feel the government's overextended itself. It's come up with headline-grabbing tax cuts that will take too long to fund and can only be funded if growth really bounces back quickly. So the British government's having to pay more now to borrow money off international investors across the world. That's putting pressure on the pound, and that's also putting upward pressure on interest rates in financial markets that the government has to offer in order to borrow money and keep the British government, frankly, ticking over. And Rachel Reeves is one of the few people now at the top of British politics who really can say she has professional experience of working in financial and economic policy making, which she has. And for that reason, it strikes me that Labour has a chance here amidst the maelstrom. There'll be a lot of concerned people, of course. If the pound falls a lot, it's more inflationary in the UK. We import lots of inflation. The cost of living squeeze gets tighter. But she can now say, and Labour can say, they have a card-carrying former Bank of England official running their shadow finance team, and they can start to stake out a position to say we are more credible than the Tories on this key issue, on finance, on keeping the economy on the straight and narrow. And I suspect her speechwriters will have been working overtime overnight and this morning to put in key passages in her speech, which we're about to hear, which makes those points.
What are the challenges for the Labour Party in trying to present themselves as the party of economic responsibility?
The challenges are, the deepest challenges are cultural challenges, because throughout our lifetimes, Gloria, many people will feel that the Tories have tended to look after the economy a bit more and Labour have tended to preside over, currency crises and so on. Of course, that narrative isn't entirely fair, because it was the Conservatives, John Major's Conservatives, who took us out of the ERM. We crashed out of the exchange rate mechanism. So I think the mantle of credible economic policy making is up for grabs, and that's why Keir Starmer's talk about Freudian slip. Keir Starmer's Labour Party has been keen to push back against some people more on the left wing of the party, trade unions and so on, who want to spend more money. So I think Labour now is really at a key moment how it responds to this crisis. Keir Starmer has said that he would scrap that reduction in the additional top rate of tax from 45 to 40,
yes.
But he has said that he would keep the Tories' upcoming reduction in the basic rate of income tax from 20 to 19. So it is a thin path that both the Labour leader and indeed soon the Shadow Chancellor will be walking.
And she's also going to be talking about a national wealth fund, about how you grow the economy. There's competing visions of how you grow the economy, but things thinking that a green revolution could help to create jobs. Now, we haven't seen the detail. Who would be against, more good jobs?
Yeah.
But do we expect her to give us a lot of detail today?
I don't think there'd be much detail. I mean, look, many wealthy countries have what we call sovereign wealth funds. The Norwegians in particular have got a huge sovereign wealth fund that helps them to provide a better standard of living for their citizens. A lot of the Middle Eastern economies, and indeed Russia, they've put money aside from their natural resource wealth. Now, the UK is, of course, a net energy importer, but we can still put some wealth aside. That's what Rachel Reeves is arguing, for a rainy day, if you like. It's all part of her attempts and the broader Labour Party's attempts, particularly today when the currency markets are rocky to say the least, to present themselves as the credible party of economics. Now, the only Labour leader in our lifetime that's been able to do that was Tony Blair, and he did that in the mid to late 90s off the back of that exchange rate mechanism debacle which John Major's Conservatives oversaw in the early 90s. Labour strategists will now be thinking, is this, I wouldn't call it a run on the pound, we're a long way from that. And the pound has regained most of the losses, by the way, overnight. It's very important that we say that. It's now up near $1.07, $1.08, having gone down to $1.
And this matters because of the things that we import.
And that matters hugely.
Dollars.
That matters hugely. If the pound goes much, much lower, we import lots of inflation. In particular, we import lots of energy that's priced in dollars, so it costs more pounds for that energy, and inflation goes up, meaning more interest rates. The currency really is a very, very important thing. It's not just about changing your pounds into dollars if you're lucky enough to be going to Euro Disney in Florida or something. It's much, much more important than that. But for Rachel Reeves now in this speech, and I think her speech will be transformed given what's happening on financial markets, it'll be all about accusing the Conservatives of casino economics, short-termism. It will all be about building her credibility. She will mention that she worked at the Bank of England. I will put lots of money on it. And trying this sovereign wealth fund, this national wealth fund, which she was going to focus on anyway, that will be part of her story, if you like, that we are the party of long-term wealth management and financial responsibility.
Now, both parties are going to be borrowing. Nobody's against borrowing more money at the moment, which is actually is in itself a new territory in British politics. It's the scale of borrowing that the parties differ on.
That's right. I mean, we must say, responsible journalism must keep saying that there are definitely two sides to this story. You know, the UK's debt as a percentage of GDP is relatively low compared to
Rachel
other big
Reeves,
countries.
the Shadow Chancellor, is on her feet.
It is a privilege to stand here as your Shadow Chancellor under Keir Starmer's leadership. But I know what a responsibility this is too. We are facing a national emergency. Energy prices up. The cost of the weekly food shop up. People's wages not keeping up. On Friday, the Chancellor had an opportunity to set out a serious response to the cost of living crisis, and he failed. What did we get instead? A tax cut for the wealthiest 1%, increased bankers' bonuses, and more than £50 billion piled onto the national debt every single year. They didn't just break their own fiscal rules for the 10th time in 12 years. In one go, they borrowed more than in any single budget since 1972. With inflation already high and interest rates already rising, the message from financial markets was clear on Friday. And this morning, that message is even more stark. Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. And in turn, that means the cost of borrowing for working people will now go up too, with higher mortgage repayments for families. And all for what? Not to invest in the industries of the future, not for our NHS, and not for our schools, but for tax cuts for the wealthiest. A return to trickle-down economics, an idea that has been tried, has been tested, and has failed. Why should my constituents in Leeds West, why should people in Merseyside pay for tax cuts for those who are already the wealthiest? It's not what anyone voted for. It's putting our economy in danger, and Conference Labour will fight it every step of the way. Conference. Let me tell you what I believe. I believe that hard work should be met with fair reward. I believe that strong public services are the backbone of any decent society. I believe that inequality divides and holds us back as a country. Conference, I believe that the task of building a fairer society is a moral responsibility, and more than that, it is the route to a stronger economy. The truth is at the heart of Labour's plans for growth, and today I want to tell you why. Last April, on a cold spring evening, I knocked on the door of a constituent. When I reached out to shake her hand, it was purple and freezing cold. Already back then, she was afraid to put the heating on, struggling to get by on the small pension that she had built up through a lifetime of work. As energy bills and inflation rise even higher, I often think of her. Conference, that is the stark reality facing people all around our country today. And while the Prime Minister spent months denying the need for action on energy prices, Labour was calling for a freeze on the energy price cap. Labour was calling for an end to the indefensible premium paid by families with prepayment meters. And crucially, Labour was calling for a windfall tax on the unimaginable profits being made by the oil and gas companies. Because a proper windfall tax would mean that working people didn't have to foot the bill. But the Prime Minister is content to let energy giants pocket the cash and leave your children and your grandchildren to pick up the tab. Under these Tories, those with the broadest shoulders carry the lightest load. And not by accident, but by choice. Conference, it is time for a government that is on your side, and that government is a Labour government. The effects of Putin's war have reverberated around the world, and we will not waver in our support for Ukraine. The causes of this crisis are global, but our unique exposure to rising energy prices is a result of the choices of Conservative governments. Inaction on insulating homes, inaction on renewable and nuclear energy, and the sheer irresponsibility of closing our gas storage facilities. We are feeling the consequences of a 12-year Tory experiment in unilateral energy disarmament. And what's their answer? Lifting the ban on fracking. Conference. Fracking is dangerous, it is bad for the planet, it won't even reduce our bills, and with Labour it will not happen. Here is our alternative. our green prosperity plan to provide the only sustainable solution to the energy crisis, to free ourselves from dependence on Russia, to invest in solar, in wind, in tidal, in hydrogen and in nuclear power, and to pass on to our children a fairer and a greener country. This is a moral responsibility, and it's an economic necessity. On climate change, the costs of inaction today will mean far greater costs tomorrow. I refuse to leave our children to pick up the pieces of our failure. Conference, I will be a responsible Chancellor. I will be Britain's first Green Chancellor. Ed Miliband has just set out how the next Labour government will cut energy bills for good by generating all of our electricity from clean sources by 2030. But our Green Prosperity Plan is about something else too. It is about economic growth, because British businesses are falling behind in the global race for new industries, and that matters. It matters that the largest offshore wind farm in Scotland has its blades made not in Scotland, but thousands of miles away. It matters that the rest of Europe is powering ahead with electric battery factories, and we are stuck in the slow lane. It matters that Germany, France, and the US are making the running with green hydrogen, but we are not. We have the ability, but we want the jobs here. We want the factories here, and we want British businesses to take the lead. Here is the deal. The next Labour government will create a national wealth fund so that when we invest in new industries, in partnership with business, the British people will own a share of that wealth, and the taxpayer will get a return on that investment. Wealth flowing from jobs in electric battery factories, in the West Midlands, the North East, the North West and the South West. Offshore wind driving investment in our ports, from the Humber to Southampton, East Anglia to Belfast. Clean steel, with jobs in Rotherham, Sheffield, Scunthorpe, Cardiff and Port Talbot. And carbon capture in our industrial heartlands, in Grangemouth and in South Wales, in Humber and in Teesside, and here in Merseyside too. Because Conference, when I say I want to buy, make and sell more in Britain, I mean it. What you will see in your town, in your city with Labour, is a sight that we have not seen often enough in our country. Cranes going up, shovels in the ground, the sounds and the sights of the future arriving, secure, skilled jobs for plumbers, electricians and joiners, for designers, scientists and engineers. Wealth that will flow back into your community and onto your high street. Wealth that the British people will own a stake in. Wealth that is invested in our country's future. That is a real plan for climate. That is a real plan for growth and Conference. That is a real plan for levelling up. A zero carbon economy, made right here, made in Britain. It is time for a government that is on your side, and that government is a Labour government. And Conference, what about the Tories? 6 different plans for growth in 12 years, each announced with great fanfare, each making no difference. A library of failure. Conference, they've had 12 years. Have they got growth up? No. Have they got inflation down? No. Have they got child poverty down? No. Have they got the NHS waiting lists down? No. And have they even got the debt and the deficit down? No. Conference, it's 12 years of failure. And now, they have replaced levelling up with trickle down. An economic philosophy inadequate to a modern world, and a moral philosophy inadequate to a decent society. Trickle-down economics is a very simple idea, that if we just slash taxes and regulation, we will unleash investment and growth. That how wealth is shared doesn't really matter. Vast gaps between people and places, no importance. Workers' rights, consumer protection, strong public services, all worth sacrificing. That wealth is just created by a few people, a few businesses. It's why, at the same time that ministers lecture low-paid workers about showing restraint, that they can't restrain themselves from removing the cap on bankers' bonuses. I dare any Tory MP to tell a nurse or a care worker to their face that what our country needs right now is bigger bonuses for bankers. It's true, trickle-down is a very simple idea and a very wrong one. Not just wrong because it isn't fair. Wrong too, Conference, because it doesn't work. Trickle-down is wrong because how wealth is shared does matter to growth. High inequality strangles the spending power of working people. It piles its social costs onto our public services. It suffocates potential. Trickle-down is wrong because in a turbulent world, businesses need government as a partner. Trickle-down is wrong because strong institutions and robust public finances provide the foundations for a strong economy. And trickle-down is wrong, Conference, because a strong economy needs strong public services. We will defeat the failed ideas of the past with the focus, the ambition, and the ideas for the future. Conference, here's the truth. Wealth doesn't trickle from the top down. It comes from the bottom up and the middle out, from the talent and the efforts of tens of millions of ordinary people and from thousands of businesses. Our economy needs the most productive, most high-tech businesses to thrive in Britain. And we all rely on what I call the everyday economy, on transport workers and delivery drivers, on supermarket and retail workers, our NHS and care workers. Don't let anyone tell you that they are not wealth creators too. They are key to our security as a society. And yet too many of them are amongst the most insecure, overworked, underpaid, undervalued. The Tories' trickle-down ideology has nothing to offer them beyond longer hours, lower pay, and less respect. Earlier this year, I met a family in Worthing, a mum and dad working 5 jobs between them, struggling to make ends meet, constantly juggling work and childcare. As a family, they only got half a day a week together. They felt that any hope of buying their own home had evaporated. Good people, working hard. And do you know what the mum said to me? She said, "You just wonder if you're doing something wrong." Conference, something is profoundly wrong. And let's be clear, Liz Truss, we've not fallen behind our neighbours on growth, on productivity or on pay, because British workers lack graft. It's not working people that are the problem. Conference, it's this government that is the problem. I'll tell you what a growing economy needs. rising wages so that money flows back into vibrant high streets, parents with the time to thrive at work and spend time with their children, families with enough savings to weather a storm, and people feeling the confidence to take risks, to change career, to learn new skills or start a business. So, with Labour, there will be no bonfire of workers' rights, as the Tories intend. As Angela Rayner announced, we will introduce a new deal for working people with strengthened rights fit for the times we are in. And that's not all. On day one as Chancellor, I will write to the Low Pay Commission with a simple instruction: that the minimum wage will be set at a level that reflects the real cost of living. The last Labour government delivered Britain's first ever national minimum wage. The next Labour government will introduce a genuine living wage. That's how we will give working people security, and that's how we will grow our economy too. It's time for a government that is on your side, and that government is a Labour government. Here's another thing about growing a 21st century economy. It's no longer enough, if it ever was, for government to simply get out of the way. The challenges of global instability, of pandemics, wars, and climate crisis demand that government work in partnership with business. If I were Chancellor right now, I would bring together a National Economic Council that will bring together industry and trade unions, so working people and businesses were at the heart of economic decision-making. I have been privileged in this job to visit businesses across our country, from Rolls-Royce in Derby, pioneering research into carbon-neutral aviation, to Oxford Nanopore, leading work on DNA and RNA sequencing, right through to local businesses like Castleton Mill, once a key part of West Yorkshire's textiles industry, and now a collaborative space for freelancers, remote workers and startups. The world is changing fast, but the British capacity for enterprise, for innovation, and for hard work remains undimmed. When I talk to business, they don't tell me that their number one priority is corporation tax. They tell me about the need for properly targeted investment allowances, the need for workers equipped with the right skills, the need for certainty and a sense of direction from government, and yes, the need for a sensible working relationship with our European neighbours. So we will take those issues head on, starting with the biggest tax problem facing British businesses. Our unfair, outdated system of business rates punishes high street businesses to the advantage of online giants. So Labour will level the playing field. We will abolish business rates and replace them with a fairer system fit for the 21st century. That new system will mean that businesses would get revaluation discounts straight away, rather than waiting for years for their money back. And here's more. Today, Jonathan Reynolds launched our modern industrial strategy that recognises the importance of businesses at the high-tech frontier and of our everyday economy. It sets out a mission to make our economy more secure. We will use all powers at government disposal to buy, make and sell more here in Britain. We will make Britain the best place to start and grow a business, guided by the work of our Startup Review, headed by Lord Jim O'Neill. And we will give our nations and regions, mayors and local leaders right across Britain, the tools to shape their own future. In Labour-run Wales under Mark Drakeford, in our city regions and all around the country, we are seeing the difference that Labour can make in power. And Steve Rotherham, thank you for the leadership that you show here in Merseyside. And conference, if you're remotely serious about growth, then you've got to make Brexit work. Our agriculture and our food industries rely on trade right across Europe, but we have a deal that doesn't even include a veterinary agreement. We are pioneers in creative industries, but we have a deal which ties them in knots over visas. We are the second largest exporter of services in the world, but we have a deal that doesn't include the mutual recognition of professional qualifications. So we will fix the holes in the government's patchwork Brexit deal. And instead of picking needless fights with our largest trading partner, we will work together with our neighbours and our allies in our national interest. That is Labour's approach, proudly pro-worker and proudly pro-business, supporting innovation, sharing opportunity, reviving our high streets. Conference, it is time for a government that is on your side, and that government is a Labour government. I am proud to have started my career as an economist at the Bank of England. Its operational independence is an enduring contribution by the last Labour government to Britain's financial stability. Growth and social justice must be built on firm foundations. Yet this government has undermined the bank's independence, sacked the respected permanent secretary to the Treasury, and gagged the Office for Budget Responsibility. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing, they're not gambling with their money, they're gambling with yours. They've lost credibility, they're losing confidence, they're out of control. And I've said this before conference, but be in no doubt, there can be no return to austerity. It has left our country poorer, our public services at breaking point, and our public finances in tatters. I make this promise to you. Labour will not waver in our commitment to fiscal responsibility. That is why I set out the fiscal rules for the next Labour government a year ago. Every policy that Labour announces and every line in our manifesto will be carefully costed and fully funded. Last year, I told this conference that I was more than happy to take on the Tories when it came to economic competence, because I know we can win. I'm now wondering whether they even plan to show up for the fight. It's becoming clearer by the day. Labour is the party of economic responsibility and the party of social justice. Conference, it's time for a government that is on your side, and that government is a Labour government. Growing economy. We need a growing economy to pay for modern, sustainable public services. But a growing economy needs strong public services too. This is personal to me. My mum and dad were primary school teachers. I'm really proud of that. My sister Ellie and I used to play for hours in my dad's classroom while he worked late into the evening, because he wanted the kids that he taught to have the very best start in life. And this was all in the face of Conservative governments hostile to the very idea of public service. I went to school under those governments. I remember what it was like. This is why I joined this party. and it is why I am here today. Strong public services are the foundation of a strong society. And Conference, we owe everything to those who work in our National Health Service. But we also know that our health service today is on its knees. It is a social priority and it is an economic priority. In the last 3 years, 500,000 people have left the labour market. More than half of those due to long-term illness. So, as Keir Starmer set out a year ago, we will guarantee access to mental health treatment within a month to anyone who needs it. Here's more. We need strong, sustainable public finances alongside strong, sustainable public services. So our priority is not tax cuts for the wealthiest few. It is securing our public finances and investing in our public services. Conference, I can tell you, with a Labour government, those at the top will pay their fair share. The 45p top rate of income tax is coming back. And here's what we'll do with that money. The next Labour government will double the number of district nurses qualifying every year. We will train more than 5,000 new health visitors. We will create an additional 10,000 nursing and midwife places every year. More than that, we will implement the biggest expansion of medical school places in British history, doubling the number of medical students so our NHS has the doctors that it needs. It will fall to us to fix the damage that the Tories have done. We have done it before, and Conference, we will do it again. Know that these are Labour's priorities. Strong public services to support people and grow our economy. A greener, fairer Britain, with jobs for people in Britain. Industries owned by the people of Britain. Profits shared with the people of Britain. Pro-business and pro-worker for a stronger economy, where you do well. Because when you do well, Britain does well. Hope and opportunity, whoever you are, wherever you live. That is Labour's vision for Britain. That is what we are fighting for. Let me tell you, it's time for a government that is on your side. That government is a Labour government, and be in no doubt, Conference, that government is on its way. Thank you. Thank you, Conference. Thank you, Conference.
And that was Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, the woman who wants to be your next Chancellor. She said that Labour would be economically responsible, but would also prioritise social justice, that they could be pro-worker and pro-business. The Hall, it seems, responded well. Liam Halligan, our business economics editor, is still with us. I thought there was a lot of great words there. I didn't get the sense that there was that much detail.
There wasn't much detail, but as we said, as we were waiting to hear the Shadow Chancellor stand up, it's all about expectations. It's all about creating the notion that Labour are the responsible party with our public finances. And indeed, as predicted, she said, I'm proud to have worked at the Bank of England. She was an economist at the Bank of England. Labour will never waver in our commitment to fiscal responsibility, economic responsibility. The Tories are out of control. Again, Labour trying to paint the Tories as running a casino economy. And indeed, as the Shadow Chancellor was speaking, the pound's actually been recovering this morning. It's back where it was this time yesterday, before it slumped from about $1.08 to $1.03 in Asian markets. But there's speculation now, Gloria, and it's firming up, as the Shadow Chancellor was speaking, that the reason the pound is regaining is because financial markets expect the Bank of England to come in with some kind of emergency interest rate rise or another form of intervention. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen. All I'm saying is that I'm in touch with people in the financial markets who are saying this is why the pound is going back up again, because they're expecting some kind of emergency intervention. If that happens, that is a political gift for Labour, but for GBNews viewers and listeners at home and elsewhere, that means higher mortgage rates, higher borrowing costs, and a higher cost of living.
Now, Labour are in positive mood at this conference. Now, of course, we've only just had that, I'm not going to call it a mini-budget, because it was the most dramatic financial statement I think any of us
biggest tax cuts in 50 years.
Can remember. Now, it might work. The government's policies, the government's plans, it might lead to growth. We just don't know. Rachel Reeves doesn't know. None of us know for certain.
It may well indeed. I could sit here and give a lot of good reasons why the pound should be holding up. The fact that UK national debt is lower than most other G7 countries. The fact that, some financial institutions are predicting quite strong growth for the UK. So it could work, and if it does work, it strikes me if the government, Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, can get through this really difficult period of market scrutiny, and there'll be all kinds of traders getting together trying to do what we call shorting the pound, betting on its decline to try and bring the decline about, as happened back in 1992 when we crashed out of the exchange rate mechanism. It may be if we can get through this period, then the government will get onto a higher growth path. Let's be clear. Rachel Reeves said Labour would reverse that cut in the top rate, the additional rate of income tax from 45 pence in the pound to 40%. But Labour are not going to reverse Tory plans to bring in a cut in the basic rate of income tax from 20 to 19 next spring, which costs far, far, far more money. You have to borrow a lot more to bring in that tax cut in the short term than the top rate of tax.
Liam, you're going to be joining us with your expert analysis throughout the show. Later in the show, we'll also be speaking to the General Secretary of a trade union. We have not one, but two shadow cabinet ministers to speak with you. And after the weather, we'll be getting the reaction from two of the finest political journalists. It's your weather next.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather updates. A mixture of sunshine and showers today, but it is pretty fresh out there. A cold wind coming in from the north. That's been developing through the night thanks to a big area of low pressure. The wind's swinging in and pushing away this weather front. And as I say, bringing that chilly feel, but also bringing a mixture of sunshine and showers. The showers plentiful across northern Scotland. We'll also continue to see some coming in across parts of North Wales, drifting down into the Midlands, perhaps one or two getting to the southeast. Southwest England seeing a scattering of showers as well, and also along the east coast. Many other areas, though, in between, not seeing many showers at all and staying largely dry and bright. But even when the sun's out, it is not warm. Temperatures a touch below average, and it feels colder, particularly if you're exposed to that northerly wind, which will continue to blow through the evening and overnight and continue to bring a sprinkling of showers down, particularly through the Irish Sea into Liverpool Bay area, across much of Wales and parts of southwest England, the more eastern parts of Northern Ireland and northern Scotland. Again, down the eastern side, not too many showers, many places dry. That breeze helping to keep the temperatures up, but still getting well down into single figures in the countryside and feeling fairly fresh once more on Tuesday morning. A whole host of showers at this stage coming into parts of northwest England, North Wales, and some of them will filter down into the Midlands, the odd one getting into East Anglia and the southeast. Plenty of showers across northern Scotland. Thicker cloud across Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall. Could be quite a damp afternoon across Cornwall in particular, with persistent rain here. Again, temperatures below average and feeling cooler with the wind, although the wind's perhaps easing a touch tomorrow compared to today, but still feeding in some showers into parts of North Wales. We'll see a few more getting into the eastern side as we head into Wednesday morning. The rain in the southwest also becoming a little more extensive overnight before clearing away on Wednesday. Sunny spells and a few showers Wednesday, Thursday. Could see some wet and windy weather swing across on Friday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The value of the pound, how it's fallen.
Welcome back to Liverpool, where we are broadcasting from the Labour Party conference. We'll have some great guests coming up for you, but you may have just seen the woman who wants to be your Chancellor address the party conference, but actually she was addressing you. So how did she do? Well, to go through it now are Kate Ferguson, the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, and Kevin Schofield, who is the political editor of The Huffington Post UK. Kate, let's start with you. What do you think Sun readers will make of that?
Well, I think that Rachel delivered a pretty confident speech, and it was pretty pro-business, which I think Sun readers will like. Her main announcement in the speech was that she's going to bring back that upper rate of income tax, that 45p band, which Kwasi Kwarteng announced only last week they're doing away with, and she's going to use that money to bankroll the NHS and more nurses. I think that's pretty clever. If you're going to go into the next election saying we want to raise taxes, that's hugely controversial, never a clean or nice argument to make, is it? So probably their best shot at making that argument is to link it to something people really loved. People loved the NHS. So, I thought that wasn't a bad idea.
I thought there wasn't that much detail in it, Kevin, it seemed to me, but perhaps at this stage you don't need to give much detail. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a bit of a danger there for Labour because, potentially this could be the last conference before the next general election. There was a lot of buzz last night, again, that there might be an early election, So this is Rachel Reeves' big chance, as you say, to try and sell herself to the country as the next Chancellor of the Exchequer. I mean, it was a very competent speech. Rachel's a class act, she's definitely one of Labour's best performers, very good public speaker. But I did wonder, had Kwasi Kwarteng not announced last Friday that he was doing away with the 45p rate, what would she have had to announce today? The big announcement is that they're going to bring it back and spend it on the NHS, as Kate says. Other than that, there was nothing really new in it. A lot of attacks on the Tories, as you might expect, playing up Labour's pro-business credentials. But as I say, if I hadn't been that thing right at the very end, there'd be nothing really for people like me and Kate to actually write about,
Actually, interestingly on that as well, it's interesting that, yes, the language was quite aggressive on attacking the Tories, attacking trickle-down economics, but where was the argument there for growth, for aspiration? And once again, maybe we have heard a Labour Chancellor come away in their shadow Chancellor, I should say, and their top line is we're going to put up taxes.
For the rich.
For the rich.
Do you think that's politically dangerous? I mean, there's an argument that says any offer of raising people's taxes might give people a worry, some fear that actually they're next in line.
I think the danger for Labour there is that the only thing people hear at home is we'll put up your taxes. So saying you're going to put up taxes on the rich, that plays well in the hall here amongst Labour activists. But outside of the hall, people are pretty aspirational. £150,000 a year obviously is a lot of money, an awful lot of money.
600,000 people earn it, don't they?
Exactly, yeah. But people, think to themselves, well, actually, I would quite fancy earning that amount of money, and if I do, Labour are going to absolutely clobber me for tax. So it's a bit of a gamble in a way as well. And in the past, Labour have gone into elections talking about taxing the rich, and then lost that election. So it's not.
So it's not cost-free.
No,
it's not cost-free. Now, lots of people are saying that what the Tories have set out is a gamble. They don't know that it's going to definitely lead to growth. There's laws of scepticism around about it. But Labour are taking a gamble as well because it might work. And the economy might be in a good place when that next election comes. So it sort of feels a lot easier this week for Labour than it might do in 6, 8, 12, 15 months' time, because that's the length of time before Liz Truss has to go to the country.
Exactly. I think Liz Truss and her economic policy is both good and bad for Labour. It's given Liz's brand of Toryism is hugely different to Labour Party. So there's clear blue water between the two parties now. They're differentiated. So Labour can go in and say, we're more statist, and they don't have sort of a Boris Johnson kind of figure parking the Tory tanks on their lawn anymore. But, and this is a huge but, what Liz is doing, which I think could be very popular, is she's got a recipe for what she says will cause growth. So she's saying, I'm going to do these tax cuts, I'm unapologetic about it, this is my recipe for growth, I'm going to face down the naysayers. If that works, if we start growing, I think she'll come out triumphant, because she'll have kind of done this controversial thing, she'll have seen it through, and she'll get all of the credit. And where were Labour in that argument? They were nowhere. As ever, these things all rely on what happens with the economy. Do people feel better going into the next election? Are our wages starting to go up again? Is the economy back growing again? And it all hinges on that.
Kevin, the party seems to be in good spirits. They seem quite optimistic about their chances at the next election, but this is the Labour Party. There's always rows behind the scenes. Are you picking any worrying ones up for the Labour leadership?
Nothing particularly worrying. This afternoon there's going to be a debate on proportional representation, which is going to...
It's a bit weird, isn't it, when people are worrying about paying their eligibles, that they're actually discussing the electoral system.
I completely agree, and most normal people just can't get their heads around it. So that's something that will get passed this afternoon. Keir Starmer's been pretty clear, not interested. So that's, a little bit. But when you compare it to the fights that we had when Jeremy Corbyn was leader between left and right in the Labour Party, it's small beer, really. So yeah, I think there's a sense that a general election's coming. Labour needs to be unified and present a united front to the country. And it's all about trying to get Keir Starmer into number 10. But yeah, he's by no means sealed the deal, and a lot's going to hinge on his speech tomorrow.
And Keir Starmer, in order to become Labour leader, made a series of pledges, promises to Labour Party members, things like nationalisation. They all seems to be in the bin, those pledges that he made during the leadership contest.
Sorry, say that again, Gloria.
So when Keir Starmer was seeking the votes to become Labour leader from Labour Party members, he was presenting quite arguably a left-wing offer to them. There were a series of pledges which included nationalisation of certainly of energy, I think of mail too. He doesn't talk about things like that anymore.
No, exactly. I mean, when Keir ran for Labour leader, we'll remember that. He's kind of sewed it up pretty quickly, didn't he? Before you blink and he'd won it. You know, all of that union backing and huge parliamentary backing too. And he sort of had pitched himself as this kind of almost soft left, all-encompassing figure. So he did enough for the left that they could carry the soft left with him. He did enough for the right to be able to see himself as this big modernising heir to Blair. And yes, as leader, I mean, I don't think it's that shocking, but he is obviously inch by inch pitching to the centre ground. Keir and his shadow cabinet are very clear. They're occupying the centre ground now. They don't want to move from it. So yeah, the left won't get that much from him. They're probably a bit naive to think they would have, in my opinion. So yeah, very much wants to win the next election from the centre ground, doesn't he? And that's why, in a way, I think Liz is very clear in the ground she holds, but that is a libertarian, quite economically right-wing ground. And for the Labour Party, that does give them kind of the whole of the centre ground for themselves.
What I find incredible is that you just think 3-4 years ago the left wing controlled the Labour Party, and they've managed to let it all slip through their fingers. It's amazing how quickly it's turned. There was a lot of left wing motions put up for debate at conference. They've all been kicked out. They're not even going to make it to the conference hall floor, which, as I say, when you consider that not so long ago organisations like Momentum were in the ascendancy in the Labour Party, it's remarkable how they've managed to turn it around. So yeah, the left aren't happy. They think that Keir Starmer's sold out. He's betrayed them in order to become leader, but he doesn't really care. It doesn't do him any harm, actually, I think, for the left wing to be belly aching a little bit. All he cares about now is winning the next election.
But does it cause a problem if the Labour leadership is fighting with the trade unions, a lot of whom fund them, quite frankly, and there's been a long-running debate about whether they should show solidarity with working people who are on those picket lines? Is that a sore that could weep?
Potentially. But what I thought was quite interesting was if you think back to when Jeremy Corbyn was leader, Len McCluskey was General Secretary of Unite, and he was here touring the studios, making headlines, causing trouble for the right of the party. The Unite General Secretary, Sharon Graham, isn't even here. Didn't even bother coming, which I think is quite significant. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a gamble, but at the end of the day, where else have the trade unions got to go? I mean, I've been covering politics long enough to say I've heard plenty of arguments from the unions saying they'll withdraw funding for the Labour Party unless they do it. It never quite comes off. I might be wrong, it might happen at some stage, but I don't feel like there's this massive groundswell of opposition to Keir Starmer within the trade union movement.
Just briefly, if you would, Kate.
I think we were expecting it to kick off a bit more at this conference, weren't we, with the unions? And actually it seems that whatever has been done behind the scenes so far, they've kept it pretty under wraps, because bubbling away underneath is this big row, right? But we've not seen it kick off, so I think Keir will be pretty happy with that so far.
Well, I'm very happy to have had your insights and analysis. You have been fantastic. Kevin Schofield, political editor of the Huffington Post UK, and Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. It's so nice to say political editor and look at a woman. It is your weather now, and we'll be back at after the 1 o'clock bulletin with Lisa Nandy.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather updates. A mixture of sunshine and showers today, but it is pretty fresh out there. Cold wind coming in from the north. That's been developing through the night thanks to a big area of low pressure. The wind's swinging in and pushing away this weather front, and as I say, bringing that chilly feel, but also bringing a mixture of sunshine and showers. The showers plentiful across northern Scotland. We'll also continue to see some coming in across parts of North Wales, drifting down into the Midlands, perhaps one or two getting to the southeast. Southwest England seeing a scattering of showers as well, and also along the east coast. Many other areas, though, in between, not seeing many showers at all and staying largely dry and bright. But even when the sun's out, it is not warm. Temperatures a touch below average, and it feels colder, particularly if you're exposed to that northerly wind, which will continue to blow through the evening and overnight and continue to bring a sprinkling of showers down, particularly through the Irish Sea into Liverpool Bay area, across much of Wales and parts of southwest England, the more eastern parts of Northern Ireland and northern Scotland. Again, down the eastern side, not too many showers, many places dry. That breeze helping to keep the temperatures up, but still getting well down into single figures in the countryside and feeling very fresh once more on Tuesday morning. A whole host of showers at this stage coming into parts of northwest England, North Wales, and some of them will filter down into the Midlands, the odd one getting into East Anglia and the southeast. Plenty of showers across northern Scotland. Thicker cloud across Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall. Could be quite a damp afternoon across Cornwall in particular, with persistent rain here. Again, temperatures below average and feeling cooler with the wind, although the wind's perhaps easing a touch tomorrow compared to today, but still feeding in some showers into parts of North Wales. We'll see a few more getting into the eastern side as we head into Wednesday morning. The rain in the southwest also becoming a little more extensive overnight before clearing away on Wednesday. Sunny spells and a few showers Wednesday, Thursday. Could see some wet and windy weather swing across on Friday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello and welcome to GB Newsday with me, Mark Longhurst, in the studio, and Gloria in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference, where Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has now set out Labour's economic plans. Addressing the party conference, she said that Labour would be the party of economic and fiscal responsibility. She accused the government of failing in their management of the UK's economy. She's promised that Labour will do more for working people while still being pro-business. Well, that speech followed news that the pound had slumped to a record low against the dollar. Also, growing expectation this afternoon of a Bank of England emergency meeting on interest rates, we're being told. More on that as we get it. Back to Gloria and Liam in Liverpool in a moment. First, the news headlines with Rosie.
A very good afternoon. It's coming up to 2 minutes past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Shadow Chancellor is accusing the government of putting the economy in danger. Rachel Reeves says the UK is facing a national emergency, with the pound hitting a record low against the dollar after the Chancellor announced his plans to cut taxes. Addressing the Labour Party conference, she criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she says helps high earners, and outlined her priorities.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
At least 5 police officers were seriously injured and 12 people were arrested following unrest near the Iranian embassy in London. Rival groups clashed at a protest calling for an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran last night. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died in custody in Tehran after being arrested for not completely covering her hair. Shiva Mabobi is a spokesperson for the campaign to free political prisoners in Iran. She says it's time for change.
There is a government that people has never wanted this government. So that's really important. It will change. The regime will be overthrown, but no revolution has happened overnight. I think the point is now that people are putting their life in danger and they're saying we had enough. This time we have to end it and finish it. And we never ever had this type of support around the world from an individual.
2 teenagers are appearing at Leeds Magistrate Court charged with the murder of a 15-year-old boy. Kieran McLean was stabbed outside his school gates in Huddersfield last Wednesday. Police say the boys, aged 15 and 16, have also been charged with possession of a bladed article. In Russia, gunmen killed 13 people, including 7 children, at a school in the city of Izhevsk, 750 miles east of Moscow. More than 20 other people were injured before the attacker took his own life. Investigators are looking at possible neo-Nazi links, saying he was wearing a T-shirt with a swastika. Electric car owners here in the UK have been hit by a 42% rise in the cost of using public rapid charge points in just 4 months. The RAC says it's now nearly £10 more expensive to rapid charge a family-sized electric car to 80%. Their survey of over 12,000 drivers suggests that rising energy prices are putting many people off switching to an electric vehicle. Thousands of college lecturers and staff in England have started a 10-day strike over pay. The union says the level of industrial action being undertaken is unprecedented in England. They're saying the 2.5 pay offer doesn't cover employees' costs. Around 4,000 members of the University and College Union at 29 colleges in England are taking part. NASA will crash a probe into an asteroid later to test its capabilities. While the space rock being targeted isn't a threat to Earth, the DART, or Double Asteroid Redirection Test, hopes to see if it can prevent any cosmic doomsday collision. It's the first ever attempt to do so using kinetic impact. The probe lifted off in November last year and it's been travelling towards its target ever since. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, back to Gloria.
We are live in Liverpool. We continue our coverage of the Labour Party conference. Earlier, we heard from Rachel Reeves. Now, I am joined by the Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Lisa Nandy. Lisa Nandy, welcome to the show. You are speaking to Conference Hall this afternoon. Give us a sneak preview.
Well, I'll be setting out more about Labour's plans to get power and wealth distributed much more widely across this country. Clear dividing lines have opened up in the last few weeks. The Tories think that you can grow the economy and build a country by the few, for the few. We think all people and all places have to contribute to the country's success, and all people should have a stake. That's why we're promising to invest to get good jobs, clean energy jobs, back into coastal and industrial towns so that we can get money back into people's pockets. And it's also why I'll say something this afternoon about housing as well. We're going into the hardest winter that many people can imagine, with soaring housing costs as well as energy bills and food prices. We don't believe that housing is a market. Housing is a fundamental human right, and we're going to tilt power back to people, particularly in the private rented sector, so that people have far more security in their own homes.
We heard from the woman who you hope will be the Chancellor, the country's Chancellor, in the next Labour government, should you be able to form it. She wanted to stress that Labour wants to be the party of economic competence. There's a lot of responsibility in there, but actually, was there enough radicalism? Don't you need to present a really different offer? Was it inspiring enough?
Well, look, 3 years ago we came to Labour Party conference, having suffered our worst election defeat in a century. We lost the trust of people to govern. The first line in Labour's constitution says we seek the trust of the people to govern, and through a combination of unfunded spending commitments, not being careful with people's money at a time when they haven't got a lot of it, through a combination of Brexit, an unpopular leader, we fundamentally broke that trust. We've rebuilt that trust now. I've come to this conference here today to say, not only can you trust us with your money, we know you haven't got a lot of it and we'll spend it wisely. That's why all our spending commitments are fully costed and fully funded, but that we have a plan for Britain.
There's still borrowing involved, though. Both parties will borrow.
Well, sure, but the difference between us and the Tories is that last week they set out around £30 billion of tax cuts targeted at the very wealthy and refused to release the impact assessment, the Office of Budget Responsibility, which traditionally publishes forecasts, alongside it. And by doing so, what they've done is create enormous instability in the markets. The value of the pound is falling. That will push up oil and gas prices. They've created the perfect storm. What we're doing is setting out plans that are fully funded, fully costed. We know how we're going to pay for them, and we understand the impact that that will have. That is being safe, sensible, careful with the future of the country, not gambling it away on the hope that you can go for broke and win the next general election.
But maybe you're gambling, because actually you don't have a crystal ball, I don't have a crystal ball, nobody has a crystal ball. The government's plans for growth, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, the plans that they set out last Friday, it might work. It might work, and the economy might grow, and then Labour will be in difficulty at the next election if she does deliver her plan for growth and it works.
Look, this conference for us is not about Labour, it's about the country. We fundamentally broke that trust 3 years ago. We've rebuilt the country in a party that is fit to govern, and it's widely expected. We've come here this week to show people that we're ready to govern with a proper plan for this country. Do I think that the Conservative plans are going to work? No, I don't. And the reason that I don't think that they're going to work is because they've tried it before. They've tried uncapping bankers' bonuses. They've tried piling investment into the City of London and small corners of the country. They've tried taking all of the wealth out of our economy and handing it to a very few. And it's created a low-growth, high-tax economy where working people pay the price. We're here today and this week, and I'll be saying later today, that the country can do better than this. We can build a country where everyone contributes and everyone gains. In the end, that is the only way to grow the economy.
Many public sector workers, they are striking at the moment. They're striking because they can't afford to get by on the wages because prices are rising so significantly. They want your support. They want you on the picket line, standing in solidarity with them. They want you to be the Workers' Party, and according to them, that means standing literally side by side.
I mean, I've been an MP for 12 years and I've always stood side by side with workers who are struggling, and I think most workers are now struggling. It's not just some people who don't know how they're going to pay their bills and feed their families this winter. It's most people. We've got an economy that we work for harder than ever but doesn't work for us. So of course I'll stand with workers when they say we deserve the right to be paid properly and to be able to feed our kids. But I'll do more than that, because they deserve more than that. We're going to fix this broken economic model, and we're going to fix this country so that it delivers for people. They don't want
public sector pay rises.
They don't want me just protesting. They want me, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves out showing how we're going to solve the problem. That's what we're doing in Liverpool this week, and this huge support from the trade union movement here. The mood, I don't think, has been as good as this at conference for at least a decade. People feel positive, they feel angry about what's happening to our country, and they feel absolutely determined that this time we're going to win.
Would they be getting pay rises under a Labour government?
What we could afford, we will always share the proceeds of growth more widely. With a Labour Party, the clue is in the name, with a party of working people, built by working people, for working people. But what we've been really clear about is that this is people's money, they don't have a lot of it, and we're going to spend it wisely. That's why we've said, for example, that we would restore the top rate of tax so that those who earn the most contribute the most, and we would make sure that that money goes back into our public services, particularly the National Health Service, which is in crisis at the moment, because that's the right priority at this time.
Now, you are shadow levelling up, Secretary. Something that's been confirmed, I think it's just before we went on air, is the closure of the Doncaster Sheffield Airport.
Oh, has it?
Liz, that's right. You may not have seen that. Now, Liz Truss said that she would protect it at a previous, during questions in the House previously. Your reaction to the news that it is set to close?
I mean, that is really, really devastating news. It's not just the jobs that are at the airport, it's the whole impact on the regional economy. And I know that Oliver Coppard, who is the mayor in South Yorkshire, has been moving heaven and earth to try and get the owners of that airport to come forward with a rescue package. He's been trying to get the government to meet their commitments and to fulfil their promises. I think a lot of people in the region will be feeling absolutely devastated at that news, and it's just another sign to me that this government didn't mean it when they said they were going to level up. They didn't mean it when they said that they would build a country that worked for everybody. But what does that mean? That means that Labour has to step forward, and this afternoon I'm going to set out how we will.
Final question. Keir Starmer, the man who wants to be our Prime Minister, will speak to the hall, but actually to the country tomorrow afternoon. Can you give us any sneak preview?
Well, he's going to set out a few policy announcements, as you would imagine. I will probably be in serious trouble if I tell you exactly what that's going to be. But the story that Rachel Reeves has been telling about growth in the economy, sharing power and assets more widely, the story that I'll be telling this afternoon, the story that Keir Starmer will be telling tomorrow, that is the story of the country that we can be. And tomorrow, when you hear what he's got to say, I think a lot of people, a lot of your viewers, hopefully, especially those people whose trust that we lost in the past, I think they're going to feel actually that there isn't just an opposition to this awful government, but that we're an alternative.
Lisa Nandy, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time today. Mark Longhurst, back to you in our studio.
Gloria, thank you. Just to update you, because we may well obviously get some reaction from the conference on this, we are getting this indication from the city that they are expecting perhaps some kind of emergency meeting of the Bank of England, the Monetary Policy Committee this week, to actually look at interest rates, bearing in mind, of course, what Rachel Reeves said about this government out of control. This could well be a gift to Labour, couldn't it, if they had to push up rates this week?
Well, it feels very much like we're talking at a time as things are really, really happening in the economy, what's going on with the pound, that, as you suggested, that news that we might expect a significant intervention by the Bank of England. It could be an opportunity for Labour, but alternatively, it could take people's minds off the conferences and right back to economics and how any economic changes are going to affect them in their pockets, Mark.
Yeah, indeed, the cost of living crisis continues. Gloria, for the moment, thanks. Back to you in Liverpool in a moment, but let's just actually indicate to you what the Bank of England spokesman has said when he was actually asked about this emergency meeting. No comment, close quotes. There is a meeting, we understand, at 5 o'clock. We'll try and keep you updated throughout the afternoon on that. Well, of course, the conference in Liverpool, not the only politics happening today, because earlier the Scottish First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was at a dairy farm in the Bridge of Allan. Now, she spoke about the Scottish funds to reduce industry carbon emissions, but more importantly, perhaps, she reacted to news about the pound falling to its record low against the dollar. This is what she had to say.
Today I'm here highlighting a Scottish Government fund to help industry decarbonise their operations, and I'm here at Graham's Dairy looking at a project that they've managed to implement as a result of funding from the Scottish Government. So in simple terms, decarbonising their heating process so that they reduce carbon emissions significantly but also reduce their costs of energy. So these are the kind of projects that we want to support business to introduce and implement, because because not only is it good for business, it will help us overall as a country meet our net zero targets. We'll look to continue to support agriculture in a whole range of different ways. You know, food and drink, really important to Scotland's economy, really important to our international brand, so it's important that we support agriculture. Decarbonising agriculture is a big part of meeting our net zero targets. We've got work underway to look in detail at how we do that. We have a target to reduce emissions in agriculture by more than 30% by 2032. That's very challenging, and the only way to do that is in partnership with our agriculture sector. We have a consultation underway right now. We've got those targets for the early part of the 2030s, and there's a whole range of different ways. I mean, already we have farmers and the agriculture sector more generally doing really innovative work to try to make progress here, and that will continue in the period ahead. Well, the UK economy is in crisis right now, and that is not an exaggeration. The House of Commons should be immediately recalled so that it can start to undo some of the damage that was done by the Chancellor in his so-called mini-budget on Friday. The proposals, or policies rather, in that budget were both morally abhorrent, you know, racking up borrowing that future generations will have to repay, not to invest in the economy generally or support the majority of people who are struggling right now, but to make a relatively small number of already rich people even richer through tax cuts for the wealthiest. That is morally indefensible. But what we're also seeing is that the announcements on Friday are fiscally reckless. We see the pound in free fall, and that will lead to greater inflation because it makes the cost of imports even more expensive. We see the cost of government borrowing going up and up and up right now. It is almost inevitable, I think, that we're going to see the Bank of England further hike up interest rates, which will hit ordinary people in terms of mortgage repayments and other debt repayments. You know, we have a UK economy in crisis, in free fall right now, and an ideologically driven Prime Minister and Chancellor that seem oblivious to the damage that they are doing to millions of ordinary people. It is indefensible.
Nicola Sturgeon speaking to us a little earlier. We'll be heading back to Gloria in Liverpool for more from the Labour Party conference. Also asking, will the Bank of England be raising rates once more? And the Italian job. An election result in Italy. Does it mean Italy's first female Prime Minister? Before that, though, latest weather.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather updates. A mixture of sunshine and showers today, but it is pretty fresh out there. Cold wind coming in from the north. That's been developing through the night thanks to a big area of low pressure. The wind's swinging in and pushing away this weather fronts, and as I say, bringing that chilly feel, but also bringing a mixture of sunshine and showers. The showers plentiful across northern Scotland. We'll also continue to see some coming in across parts of North Wales, drifting down into the Midlands, perhaps one or two getting to the southeast. Southwest England seeing a scattering of showers as well, and also along the east coast. Many other areas, though, in between, not seeing many showers at all and staying largely dry and bright. But even when the sun's out, it is not warm. Temperatures a touch below average, and it feels colder, particularly if you're exposed to that northerly wind, which will continue to blow through the evening and overnight and continue to bring a sprinkling of showers down, particularly through the Irish Sea into Liverpool Bay area, across much of Wales and parts of southwest England. The more eastern parts of Northern Ireland and northern Scotland. Again, down the eastern side, not too many showers, many places dry. That breeze helping to keep the temperatures up, but still getting well down into single figures in the countryside and feeling very fresh once more on Tuesday morning. A whole host of showers at this stage coming into parts of northwest England, North Wales, and some of them will filter down into the Midlands, the odd one getting into East Anglia and the southeast. Plenty of showers across northern Scotland. Thicker cloud across Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall. Could be quite a damp afternoon across Cornwall in particular, with persistent rain here. Again, temperatures below average and feeling cooler with the wind, although the wind's perhaps easing a touch tomorrow compared to today, but still feeding in some showers into parts of North Wales. We'll see a few more getting into the eastern side as we head into Wednesday morning. The rain in the southwest also becoming a little more extensive overnight before clearing away on Wednesday. Sunny spells and a few showers Wednesday, Thursday. Could see some wet and windy weather swing across on Friday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to GB Newsday. Let's now have a look at this extraordinary election result in Italy that's got some observers worrying about the echoes of fascism from the 1920s and 30s. A right-wing alliance has won the national election, now seeking to usher in an era of political stability in the country after years of upheaval. At least that's according to Matteo Salvini, one of the coalition's leaders. But it's Giorgia Meloni, leader of the Brothers of Italy, that's set to become the country's first female prime minister. The alliance also including Salvini's League Party and, remember him, former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi and his Forza Italia party. Well, they're all due to secure a majority in both houses of Parliament. What does that mean for the rest of Europe? Joining us now is Lorenzo Codogno, who's a visiting professor in practice at the LSE's European Institute. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, just to speak about Giorgia Meloni herself, critics say that she carries the baggage of the fascists. The party logo even has this tricolour flame that was the fascist badge.
Well, there is some truth in it. So they haven't really fully severed the link with the past. But let's face it. I mean, today's party is a brand new party. Was founded a few years ago, and we cannot really say that this is a link to fascism. I think it's a mainstream center-right coalition that is definitely leaning to the right, so more towards a nationalist, which might be far from the liking of many, including myself, I have to say. But there are also some positives. First of all, the current coalition won an outright majority in both houses, and the margin will be sufficiently large to guarantee stability for a while. The first reaction by Salvini, who is the loser within the coalition because he got less than 9% of the vote, he said, well, I don't like it, but, we got more seats than our votes because we won where we are in government in local areas, and let's work together. And so that is a constructive attitude. So my feeling is that this government will last longer than usual for Italian standards, so to speak. Right. This is good news for Italy.
But, well, you say good news, but there are those who are worried about the stance that she particularly has outlined. I'm just looking at what the Brothers of Italy have talked about. A naval blockade on migrants, and Meloni talking about her belief that white Christian civilization is under threat.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some, stand positioning of Meloni in the past that are a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
I don't think that the naval blockage is feasible, so that we can easily put that aside. But clearly, there will be a nationalist, right-leaning attitude. Although within the coalition there is Forza Italia, who is, I would say, a mainstream party, right party, centre-right party, that is in the European Popular Party. And this party is crucial because without this party, the government cannot go on. And the leader, not Berlusconi, but Tajani, who's de facto the leader, Berlusconi is already pretty old, said very clearly, we won't stay in the coalition if we move away from traditional Italian alliances, so NATO and the US, and also whether if the stance towards Europe changes. Keep in mind that Tajani was the president of the European Parliament, and so I think this is a sufficient guarantee that there won't be major departures from mainstream policies.
Well, I mean, that is the worry for the EU, isn't it? Where they're going to take Italy within the EU. Now, they are obviously still hoping to get this 200 billion euro bailout. I guess that is going to concentrate their minds before they start rocking the boat too much.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is the key point. I mean, when you have such a strong incentive, you cannot rock the boat. I think the new coalition will be willing to put its flag on the package, on the program. So that's why they are insisting on some changes. So they want to say this is our program, it's not Draghi's program.
Right.
But and I think there might be some issues on some specific reforms, such as competition or justice. But other than that, I think there is a strong incentive to continue on the same program that was set by the previous government.
Last quick thought, how is Italy going to react to having a young female prime minister?
Well, that is a positive, I would say. I mean, it was time for Italy to have a female prime minister, and I think this is a good occasion for having this kind of change. So I think it's good news in that sense.
OK. Professor Condioni, thank you very much for your time here on GB News. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, we'll be crossing back to the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, expecting to hear from the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds. First, though, let's get a news update.
A very good afternoon. It's 1:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Shadow Chancellor is accusing the government of putting the economy in danger. Rachel Reeves says the UK is facing a national emergency, with the pound hitting a record low against the dollar after the Chancellor announced his plans to cut taxes. Now, addressing the Labour Party conference, she outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she says helps high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
At least 5 police officers were seriously injured and 12 people were arrested following violent disorder near the Iranian embassy in London last night. Rival groups clashed at a protest that had been calling for an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died in custody in Tehran after being arrested for not completely covering her hair. Electric car owners here have been hit by a 42% rise in the cost of using public rapid charge points in just 4 months. The RAC says it's now nearly £10 more expensive to rapid charge a family-sized electric car to 80%. The motoring body's survey of over 12,000 drivers suggests that rising energy prices are influencing many people's decisions when it comes to buying cars. TV, online and DAB+ radio, you're up to date on GB News. Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.080 and 1.120 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,519.24 per ounce.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to GB Newsday. Back up to Liverpool in a moment to get more from the Labour Party conference. But let's just update you with what's happened down here in London, because the Chancellor was approached by a reporter a little earlier asking for comment on the fact that the pound had reached a record low against the dollar in the Asian markets this morning, and indeed suggestions that the Bank of England may be about to announce an emergency interest rate meeting. The Chancellor saying, I'm not going to make any comment now. Similarly, the Bank of England spokesman also said no comment when asked about that meeting. So we'll discuss in a moment with Liam what may be going on behind the scenes. Just to remind you, the pound fell to 103 against the dollar as markets opened in Asia. Come back a little bit to about 107, 108 now. Markets reacting, of course, to the government's mini budget, but the major tax cuts outlined in that fiscal event on Friday. It's to try and bid for economic growth. The Conservative government plans are somewhat backfiring, as economists have called on the Bank of England now to intervene with an emergency rate rise. That appears is being discussed. Just to remind you, the Monetary Policy Committee hiked the base rate by 0.5% just last Thursday. Well, in Liverpool, the Shadow Secretary Rachel Reeves criticised the government's economic plans at the conference.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
Rachel Reeves speaking a little earlier in Liverpool. Let's head back up there now to join our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. And Liam, lots of speculation and froth down here in London at what the Chancellor has said or not said, what the Bank of England may be doing. It's a bit of an open goal politically for them in Liverpool for the Labour Party.
Mark, walking around the conference, every conversation I'm having has nothing to do with the politics of the shadow cabinet or Labour's latest policy announcement. It's all about the financial markets. It's all about the pound. The pound, believe it or not, is actually fully recovered to where it was before it dropped on Asian markets overnight, back around 108. But the question is, that's probably on the expectation that the Bank of England will unveil soon, maybe even as soon as today, an emergency interest rate increase. Now, traders are concerned about big tax cuts by the Conservative government, but in fairness, we should also say traders are also concerned, financial markets are digesting the fact that the Bank of England didn't raise interest rates last week by as much as they were led to believe. We had a 0.5% interest rate rise last week rather than 0.75% interest rate rise. Look, the Bank of England's completely independent. It can do what it wants. It won't want to do an emergency interest rate rise because that suggests it got its sums wrong the last time round. But be in no doubt, these aren't arcane financial concepts. When the pound falls heavily against the dollar, then our imports become more expensive, particularly our imports of energy. Oil is priced in dollars, of course, and that affects every household and every business in the UK. So there's a great deal at stake here. But you're right, this is a chance for Labour, and Rachel Reeves did this with her speech, the Shadow Chancellor, stating that Labour is now the party of financial and responsible economic management. The Tories are running a casino economy that's out of control. So big political implications, yes, but the implications for living standards, I would say, are far more significant.
Yeah, and we've talked about the pound, but of course the other issue is the bond markets, i.e. what the government sells our debt at on the international money markets, and the yield on that, i.e. how much interest the government have to pay to get people to buy in, that shot up again today as well.
That has the amount of money, the interest the government has to offer on the debt that it sells into the market now above 4%. It was just 2% a few months ago, and that's pushing up expectations of where the Bank of England will have to set interest rates. There's the kind of conclusion in the money markets at the moment where the weight of the money is. That's pointing to, hang on to your hat, Mark, and strap yourself in, that's pointing to 6% interest rates from the Bank of England by the middle of next year, up, of course, from 2.25%, 2.25%, where we currently are as of last Thursday's decision. So these are really worrying times, not just for the 2.2 million UK households that have variable rate mortgages, people with personal loans, companies who are heavily indebted. The stakes here are very, very high. I do think, though, if the government can make a credible case, we do still have relatively low debt in this country, government debt. There is still a plausible growth story out there if the government, Kwasi Kwarteng's Treasury, and the Bank of England can coordinate this. They don't fall out, they don't start having public rows, which really would be disastrous. If the government can get through this period, then their growth plan may actually start to work. But that's a very big if.
Yeah, and of course, part of that equation is what happens to interest rates. Now, what's your feeling about this emergency meeting? I know Sir John Geeve, who is the Deputy Bank Governor, has indicated that part of the package for the bank to be independent was it had its regular monthly meetings of the Monetary Policy Committee. If they go for a panic meeting, if you like, is that going to spook the markets further?
Well, it will be a balance. Sir John Geeve's a very experienced person. You know, you don't really want to be doing emergency rate rises unless you really, really have to. And if you are going to do an emergency rate rise, you better make it count. Otherwise, you get into some kind of auction with the market. So I think if there is an emergency rate rise, it will be significant and determined and aggressive. I'm talking about 100 basis points or one whole percentage point at least. If the Bank of England gets into a kind of game of chicken with the markets, or we're only going to put up interest rates a little bit, then the weight of money in the market, opinion, the whole market, if you like, will do what we say, will go short. They will start betting against the pound, so placing bets so if the pound goes down, people make money. I think that's what happened on Asian markets overnight. I think there was a sense that obviously the government was under pressure and there would be maximum attention on the pound given that Labour conference was about to start.
OK.
For many people listening at home, this sounds like a parlour game for wealthy people, but it really, really isn't. This is macroeconomic management that affects all of our lives, and the government is very much on the hook now in terms of trying to rebuild its credibility.
Yeah, important times indeed. Liam, for the moment in Liverpool, thanks for that. Back to you a little later, but let's just reflect that one of the most contentious areas at the moment in terms of the economy and finances, green energy and energy prices. Rachel Reeves earlier made her pledge to become the first Green Chancellor.
Our Green Prosperity Plan, to provide the only sustainable solution to the energy crisis, to free ourselves from dependence on Russia, to invest in solar, in wind, in tidal, in hydrogen and in nuclear power, and to pass on to our children a fairer and a greener country. Conference, I will be a responsible Chancellor. I will be Britain's first Green Chancellor.
Chancellors.
A declaration from Rachel Reeves a little earlier. Yet more, of course, expected this afternoon. Let's head back to Liverpool now and join Gloria.
Thank you, Mark. Well, joining me now is Jonathan Reynolds, the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, who was also giving a speech this morning before Rachel. Nice to see you, Jonathan. So there's a message coming from the conference. Rachel used the phrase, I've heard you use it, Labour is pro-business and pro-worker. Can you be both? Don't they have competing interests, one to increase profits, the other to get higher wages?
I think you can be both, right? And you can know you can be both, because when I go to a factory, whether that's a Nissan factory in Sunderland or Steelworks in Port Talbot, what I get from the management and what I get when I meet the union reps in the workforce is exactly the same thing. They want to know, is there long-term commitment to their industry? Does the government take an interest in what is going on in other countries where investment decisions are going to be made and we're competing against those countries? And fundamentally, you know, there's a whole range of really exciting things happening in this country. And if we do not have a government that wants to create a market, unlock those opportunities, could be hydrogen, could be electric vehicles, could be green steel, we're not going to get those opportunities. And of course, one consequence of the absolute catastrophic set of decisions on Friday and the value of sterling is a lot of British companies are very cheap relative now to American companies who might want to take some of our technology and innovation and take it out of the UK. So you can be both. It's about the long-term commitment. It doesn't gloss over the fact, of course, I want workers to earn good wages, and of course I want companies to make a profit, and you've got to reconcile exactly where that line is. But fundamentally what these people need is exactly what we're offering.
And workers are, low-paid workers, people on medium incomes are struggling at the moment. Those workers who are members of trade unions, their general secretaries couldn't be clearer. They want you to be with them, side by side, on the picket lines. If Labour is the party of workers, wouldn't it do that?
Well, look, what they really need is to get rid of this Tory government and have me not as the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, as the Secretary of State
they want you on the picket
for
line.
Business. Well, look, what you've seen, and let's be honest, it's the government make the case themselves, 12 years of low economic growth. Why have you got strikes from barristers to train companies to parts of the NHS? Well, because everyone has suffered from 10 years of pain, 12 years of pain. They're being offered more pain now for more pain later. Of course, people aren't going to take that. And of course, people who are representing them as part of the trade unions are going to make sure that they are fulfilling and representing those workers who are on strike. And I get that. But fundamentally, let's be clear, where are people on strike in the railway industry? Not in Wales, where there's a Labour government. That dispute was settled, you know. And one of the things we have to get across is you would not be having this wave of industrial action under a Labour government because we'd run the economy better, but also we'd be willing to intervene, get people around a table and solve these disputes where they exist.
You represent a constituency which is red wall in nature. You held on, of course. You will have had a
little bit red, yeah.
You'll have had a depleted majority as a result. Of course, so many of those seats, they went to the Tories for the first time at that last election. Now, when I see national opinion polls, you must think the same. They're irrelevant, in a sense. The only polls that matter, the only views that matter, if you want to get back, is those working class voters in those Leave areas who voted Brexit. Is there any sign that they have forgiven you over what they saw as a Brexit betrayal? Is there any sign of them coming back?
I mean, if you take those constituencies, just those constituencies, I mean, that the poll lead is, I think, 2 and sometimes 3 times higher than the overall national poll lead in those areas. So yes, there is. I mean, we said very clearly, let's not go back to the Brexit debate, but we've got to make that deal work. I mean, as Rachel said in her speech, UK is an economy which is very services based. How come that deal didn't make sure that you recognise professional qualifications in this country and other countries? Of course, you know, successful trade deals do that. If you're a small business exporting from those areas to the single market, we haven't got what Canada's got with the single market, so of course we can make this better. And one of the dividends of that, by the way, is would make the situation with the Northern Ireland Protocol much easier to resolve. For instance, a veterinary agreement would take a lot of the heat out of that border, which the Conservatives put in place as part of their deal. So yes, there is. But let's be clear, we've got to appeal to the whole country. I mean, if we were just to win back those seats we lost for the first time in 2019, that still isn't the majority we need. We've got to win the seats that we were hoping to win in 2015 as well. And actually, I mean, look, I'd be lying if I said I never looked at an opinion poll. I mean, any politician who said they don't. What I take even more heart from is the fact that Labour leads now on who's best for the economy, who's best on immigration, who's got the best Prime Minister. And I think, you know, we haven't had
Liz
that.
Truss, didn't she have a slight lead? There was one poll.
Yeah, I thought she did a little bit better.
In red
I mean, she's done better than when they had no leader at all. But let's be clear, after the decisions on Friday, I wouldn't mind to see some fresh polling on that.
But we don't know. We don't know because it might work. Their economic plans, she obviously thinks that it's going to work, that it's going to lead to growth. And come that next election, which could be
I still believe I'll play football for Sunderland one day. Look, it's not as straightforward as that. Their position is this. You can cut taxes, increase spending. It's going to magically play for itself because of what they call supply-side reform, so removing employee protections, removing consumer protections as part of, you know, the legislation they put forward. If politics was as easy as that, oh God, it would be just so easy, wouldn't it? What we've seen, no, obviously I don't believe in that. What we've seen at financial markets, as Liam Halligan just said, not some sort of force of nature, but investors, traders, looking at that and saying, you are at the casino, Kwasi Kwarteng. No one believes that it is as easy as that, and no one believes you've got the policies to make the economy grow. And as a result, we are all in this country, whatever you're earning, even if you're one of these people who's had a tax cut, you're poorer right now than you were before Kwasi Kwarteng got to his feet on Friday, because the cost of government borrowing is through the roof, and we do have debts to pay. The value of sterling has fallen lower, therefore our imports and everything from fuel to food will cost you more money. This isn't working, and the risks are real.
Final question. Keir Starmer will get to his feet tomorrow here from Liverpool. He needs to make a case for why he should be our next Prime Minister. Can you give us a sneak preview into what he might say?
So you think after a successful speech by myself I might break the leader's embargo and ruin his speech? No, I think what you'll see from Keir is a continuation of the case we're putting forward, which is we accept the government's case that the last 12 years have been very poor for the economy, but we think our way, which is investment in skills and training, having an industrial strategy, reforming business rates, making Brexit work better. That's a better way for growth and fixing the problems than tax cuts for the already well off. And I really believe that.
Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, thank you for your time. Mark, back to you in the studio.
Gloria, thanks very much indeed. And of course, we'll keep you updated at Liverpool with all the activity up there. But let's bring you some other news now, with at least 5 police officers seriously injured and 12 people arrested after violent disorder near the Iranian embassy in London yesterday. Well, protests have been taking place, of course, across the world after the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. She was detained by the morality police in Iran for not completely covering her hair. Our GB News Home and Security editor Mark White has more on the story. That's just coming up for you.
Over several hours and in multiple locations, police had to contend with serious violence. Much of the disorder was, according to Scotland Yard, clearly orchestrated. Groups of protesters set on confrontation. From a noisy and impassioned rally in Trafalgar Square, by the time they reached the Iranian embassy, their anger spilled over into violence. Turning on the police lines time and again as they were prevented from reaching the embassy building. It was the death of a 22-year-old Iranian woman that sparked protests across Iran, which have now spread to several other countries around the globe. Masha Amini died in custody after being arrested by the morality police for failing to properly cover her hair. The protesters want to see an end to the Iranian regime in power since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Outside the Iranian embassy in London, a clean-up operation is underway to repair smashed windows and remove paint from the front of the building. London Mayor Sadiq Khan blamed a minority for hijacking a peaceful demonstration. Scotland Yard said it was examining CCTV, video and mobile phone footage to try to identify those responsible for the violence. The Metropolitan Police said it would always try to facilitate peaceful protest, but violence will not be tolerated. With the likelihood of more protests in the days ahead, police will have additional resources on duty to deal with any further outbreaks of disorder. Mark White, GB News.
Let's get more with Mark joining us now in the studio. It appears that, the police may have been caught on the hop by this. A really, really violent reaction, isn't it?
Well, I mean, that's the problem with sporadic protests like this. They just pop up and, it's difficult to legislate sometimes for what is actually going to happen. It's clear, according to Scotland Yard, that there was a level of orchestration in there, that leaders within that group were looking for violence. They were fighting amongst those sort of pro-regime elements in the city. There appeared to be people fighting amongst themselves within the crowd as well. And then, of course, the police become a target because the police have got to stop them getting to the embassy, as hard to stomach as that might be for some people, given what the Iranian regime stands for and the death of this young woman.
But the diplomatic status is the same no matter where you're from, isn't it?
If we started in this country letting rampaging protesters attack an embassy building, we'd have absolutely no argument to turn around and claim that our embassy should be protected in countries elsewhere in the world.
How badly injured were these policemen?
Pretty seriously injured. At least 5 of them suffered serious enough injuries to require hospital treatment. They were still being treated in hospital as of this morning, and their injuries included broken bones. There was big chunks of masonry that were being thrown, bottles and other projectiles flowing. And you can see this is the embassy here, broken windows, paint thrown at the front of that embassy. It's no stranger, of course, to violent incidents.
Well, I remember the SAS coming down the front of that building all those years ago, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely, in which 6 people, or mainly hostage takers, died in that after the SAS took the building back. That was in 1980. But since then, it has been the site of regular protests by those who want to see regime change in Iran.
Now, these are extraordinary pictures looking down at what was going on there in the street. And as you can see, and as you were saying, clearly a level of violence perhaps they're not expecting. Is there any suggestion that any of this was orchestrated from the embassy?
Not necessarily from the embassy, but a level of orchestration amongst those who were there clearly to protest against the Iranian regime. But you see just a thin line of officers there and hundreds of protesters, and those at the front, just determined to get to the embassy. They can't do that. They're just lashing out at the police. Now, the police will say, Mark, of course, that they will always try to facilitate.
Well, this is the difficulty, isn't it? I mean, given all the publicity about various events, for the Met particularly, they've got to allow these things to take place. But when do they step in and actually try and take control?
Yeah, I mean, it's fundamental freedom, the right to protest. So the police will try to facilitate that as long as it's not causing significant disruption and disorder. Clearly, in this case, disorder and violent disorder targeting their own officers. So they say they'll clamp down hard on that. What they're doing at the moment is they've made a dozen arrests. They're reviewing CCTV, their own video footage, mobile phone footage, as we've seen there. and they'll try to identify others involved in the violence.
So maybe more arrests to
expect
come.
many more arrests in the weeks ahead.
Mark, as ever, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date on that. Stay with us here on GB Newsday. Lots more to come from here and, of course, Liverpool with that Labour Party conference. Let's get an update now on the weather, though.
Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. A mixture of sunshine and showers today, but it is pretty fresh out there. A cold wind coming in from the north. That's been developing through the night thanks to a big area of low pressure. The wind's swinging in and pushing away this weather front. And as I say, bringing that chilly feel, but also bringing a mixture of sunshine and showers. The showers plentiful across northern Scotland. We'll also continue to see some coming in across parts of North Wales, drifting down into the Midlands, perhaps one or two getting to the southeast. Southwest England seeing a scattering of showers as well, and also along the east coast. Many other areas, though, in between, not seeing many showers at all and staying largely dry and bright. But even when the sun's out, it is not warm. Temperatures a touch below average, and it feels colder, particularly if you're exposed to that northerly wind, which will continue to blow through the evening and overnight and continue to bring a sprinkling of showers down, particularly through the Irish Sea into Liverpool Bay area, across much of Wales and parts of southwest England, the more eastern parts of Northern Ireland and northern Scotland. Again, down the eastern side, not too many showers, many places dry. That breeze helping to keep the temperatures up, but still getting well down into single figures in the countryside and feeling very fresh once more on Tuesday morning. A whole host of showers at this stage coming into parts of northwest England, North Wales, and some of them will filter down into the Midlands, the odd one getting into East Anglia and the southeast. Plenty of showers across northern Scotland. Thicker cloud across Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall. Could be quite a damp afternoon across Cornwall in particular, with persistent rain here. Again, temperatures below average and feeling cooler with the wind, although the wind's perhaps easing a touch tomorrow compared to today, but still feeding in some showers into parts of North Wales. We'll see a few more getting into the eastern side as we head into Wednesday morning. The rain in the southwest also becoming a little more extensive overnight before clearing away on Wednesday. Sunny spells and a few showers Wednesday, Thursday. Could see some wet and windy weather swing across on Friday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now it's to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to GB Newsday with me, Mark Longhurst, and Gloria in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference. Well, we're getting reaction to the Shadow Chancellor's speech where Rachel Reeves had set out Labour's economic plan, accusing the government of failing to properly manage the UK's economy. She said that Labour would govern with economic and fiscal responsibility. Well, that speech followed news that the pound slumped to a record new low against the dollar, 103. Also growing expectation of a Bank of England emergency meeting on interest rates. More on that as we get it. But let's get more with Gloria and Liam in Liverpool in a moment, where we're expecting a speech from Nandy, the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary. First, though, news headlines with Rosie.
Thanks, Mark. A very good afternoon to you. It's coming up to 2 minutes past 2. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Shadow Chancellor's accusing the government of putting the economy in danger. Rachel Reeves says the UK is facing a national emergency, with the pound hitting a record low against the dollar this morning after the Chancellor announced his plan to cut taxes. Addressing the Labour Party conference, she outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she says helps high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
Reacting to that speech, the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Nandy told us Labour will invest in the many, not the few.
The Tories think that you can grow the economy and build a country by the few, for the few. We think all people and all places have to contribute to the country's success, and all people should have a stake. That's why we're promising to invest to get good jobs, clean energy jobs, back into coastal and industrial towns, so that we can get money back into people's pockets.
Well, defending the government's economic plan, the Work and Pension Secretary Chloe Smith told us growing the economy will take time.
What you saw in the growth package from the Chancellor last Friday is a really bold and ambitious plan that is all about growth, and I think that's exactly right. And for me, in my particular role, what I'm most focused on is using all of those levers to help people into jobs, and that, I think, is what we all want to see.
In some other news now, the South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angry by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming high running costs, the owner, Peel Group, says it will cease operations at the end of next month. The Mayor, Oliver Coppard, criticised the company for turning down an offer of financial help. He's appealing for the group to reconsider and says he'll seek government intervention. At least 5 police officers were seriously injured and 12 people were arrested following unrest near the Iranian embassy in London. Rival groups clashed at a protest calling for an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran last night. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Masha Amini, who died in custody in Tehran after being arrested for not completely covering her hair. Shiva Mabobi is a spokesperson for the campaign to free political prisoners in Iran. She says it's time for change.
There is a government that people has never wanted this government. So that's really important. It will change. The regime will be overthrown, but no revolution has happened overnight. I think the point is now that people are putting their life in danger and they're saying we had enough, this time we have to end it and finish it. And we never ever had this type of support around the world from an individual.
The far-right party Brothers of Italy has won the Italian election, with the leader, Giorgia Meloni, set to become the country's first female prime minister. The government she'll lead is already being described by some as the most right-wing since World War II. Ms Meloni will need to form a Conservative alliance with other right-leaning parties. She says she'll back Western policy on Ukraine and won't take risks with Italy's fragile finances. Electric car owners here have been hit by a 42% rise in the cost of using public rapid charge points in just 4 months. The RAC says it's now nearly £10 more expensive to rapid charge a family-sized electric car to 80%. Well, the motoring body's survey of over 12,000 drivers suggests that rising energy prices are influencing many people's decisions when it comes to which car to buy. Thousands of college lecturers and staff in England say the 10-day strike over pay is the most significant they've taken, and it's because of the cost of living crisis. The union says the level of industrial action being undertaken is unprecedented in England. They're saying the 2.5% pay offer doesn't cover employees' costs. Around 4,000 members of the University and College Union at 29 colleges in England are taking part. NASA will crash a probe into an asteroid later to test its capabilities. While the space rock being targeted isn't a threat to Earth, the DART, or Double Asteroid Redirection Test, hopes to see if it can prevent any cosmic doomsday collision. It's the first ever attempt to do so using kinetic impact. The probe lifted off in November last year and it's been travelling towards the asteroid ever since. You're now up to date on GB News and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's go back to Gloria.
The Mayor for Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has called on the Labour Party to reinstate the 20p basic rate on income tax, which is to be reduced by the Conservative government and direct the money into the public sector. Speaking at a conference fringe event, the Metro Mayor said money from the tax cut should be used to pay carers a decent wage. Well, joining us now is Christine McAnee. She's the General Secretary of the Public Service Union, Unison. It's the biggest trade union in Britain, and great to see you on the show. So you addressed conference this morning. You said on the government's tax cuts, they're like thieving gangsters. They've got their crew and they are the only people they are looking after. Isn't it the case that your members are going to be getting an income tax cut as well, though?
Well, very slightly. So, if you're earning £1 million, for every £1 million you earn, you get a tax rebate on these new cuts of £56,000 per year. If you're on £20,000 a year, that's your earnings, and that's what lots of care workers, for example, are on. Next April, you'll see the princely sum of £157 being rebated, so that's £3 a week extra they're getting. Given what's happening with the economy, given what's happening with inflation and energy prices, that won't go very far.
Is the Labour Party doing enough to support workers who are choosing to strike over the things that you are talking about? They want a pay rise, they're struggling with the cost of living. You want them on the picket line with you, don't you?
Well, if I'm being totally honest, having a shadow minister or an MP on your picket line really makes no difference to the outcome. I'm sure, of course, local pickets want, especially the local MP, to turn up and support them, but I just think it's one of these kind of a bit of a distraction, and to be quite honest, being on a picket line, once you've got there, you've been through a huge process to be able to take legal industrial action. We've got the toughest industrial action legislation in Western Europe. You're losing a day's pay for every day you take strike action. It's really serious. And I kind of don't like the fact that some people are using it as a bit of a photo op, or let's get a selfie. But yeah, I think they should be able to come along and picket lines if they want to come and support picket lines. But it's not my job to tell Keir Starmer how to run the Labour Party. It's my job to do what I can to get the Labour to support us.
So let's talk about public sector pay. Tell us about the workers who are at the sharp end, and are you forecasting more strikes? Which of your members, which sectors are looking to strike?
So we've got disputes going on in a range of sectors, and some of the perhaps more unusual ones would be things like the Environment Agency. So they're the ones who help when there's been floods, or they run the Thames Barrier. We have Food Standards Agency, and that's the ones who work in abattoirs. So maybe the ones you wouldn't think of, but very critical. But I suppose the big one for us is the NHS. So we're the main health union in this country, and we, over October and November, will be balloting around 400,000 NHS workers across the UK. And basically because they're telling us, now I know, taking striking action in the NHS is a big deal, but what they're saying to me when I speak to them, I've had paramedics say to me, do you know what, the system is so bad that going on strike won't make it any worse. it seriously won't make it.
It will for patients.
Well, because we always put in a life and limb care, and what they're saying is it's so bad now that that's kind of the level it's at. As in, there is no slack in the system. That's why people are waiting hours for ambulances to turn up, and it's why they're waiting weeks and weeks for appointments and operations.
What sort of pay rise are you looking for?
So we're looking for an inflation-proof pay rise. At the moment, they offer in England, in Wales, and Northern Ireland, the offer for health workers is a flat rate of £1,400, which for the... So you know what's happening to energy prices. £1,400 in a year will soon be snapped up. But just to put it into perspective, if you're a nurse or a if you're a nurse or a occupational therapist or a physiotherapist, there's a kind of band, we call it band 5 in the NHS, which is where all the kind of professional clinical staff, that's the main grade for them. It will mean for them an increase of between 4 and 4.2% when inflation's running at 10%.
You want a 10% pay rise?
And we do. I'm sorry, but you know, if they can afford to give away huge sums of money in tax cuts to the very wealthy, then they can afford to give people who keep the country going a decent pay increase.
And the government finally want you to ballot on the pay offers that are made. They want you to ballot your members.
Yeah.
They're probably going to introduce legislation to do that. Now, of course, there will be costs associated with that, but isn't the principle right that it's not just you that decides whether or not to accept an offer, but you put it all to your members?
Well, in Unison, we would nearly always do that anyway, so it's not such a major issue for us. I think what I think is going to be problematic, and this is an example of them not understanding how negotiations work, is that we will do negotiations and you get a first offer. And we know from the language and the things that that's not the final offer. That's the first offer. You go away, you prepare your arguments, employers go away and do theirs, you meet again, you negotiate again, you get another offer, and then you might meet again and you get a final offer. And that's usually the one we end up going out to consult on.
Right.
And if they try and interfere with that basic process of negotiations, I think it'll be ludicrous, because we'll end up having to say to employers, no, don't make us an offer at the moment, or we'll, you know, where does it leave you in terms of trying to have negotiations where things that are said in negotiations, you have to be able to trust the people that you're negotiating with. That's the whole, I always say that, I've been a negotiator for 30 years, and a big part of it is, can you trust the people you're negotiating with? And that's where I think they could actually do a lot of damage, and they really should look at the law of unintended consequences before they bring in some of this legislation.
Really good to talk to you today.
And you, thank you.
Christina McAnee, leader of Britain's biggest union, Unison. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you very much indeed, and of course we'll keep you updated on the conference there in Labour. But let's reflect on the state of the economy now. Not looking good for Britain, as we've been reporting. The pound touching those record lows against the dollar this morning in the Asian markets, 103. It has recovered a little bit since then, and that's important because it means that commodities priced in dollars, including oil, petrol, gas, rising further in price. Well, it follows the mini-budget on Friday with the maxi impact, the new Chancellor announcing billions of pounds in tax cuts and, more importantly perhaps, a new wave of borrowing. Well, economists are predicting that there may be more upcoming interest rate rises by the Bank of England to respond to that slump in the pound. It could be an emergency meeting this week. Let's get the views now of a business commentator, economist and veteran, of course, of these things, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Justin, thanks for joining us. You've seen plenty of this before. I just think it's interesting that number 10, the Chancellor and the Bank of England saying no comment on this. Does that indicate that there's something going on behind the scenes?
Well, yes, when you say no comment, that means there is going to be a comment that's trying to work out what on earth it's going to be. They're in a very difficult situation. The Bank of England is charged to actually control inflation. But of course, actually, by putting interest rates up, you'll actually be slowing down the economy at a time when it actually government wants it to grow. But also, because sterling's dropped so much, as you were just saying, we are importing inflation. For example, our food. About 50% of our food comes from overseas. But it's all gone up in price again. So more inflation heading one way.
I'm just going to interrupt you just for a moment. We've just got a bit of interference on the signal from you, which we're just going to try and sort out. I'll just actually remind people what the Prime Minister's official spokesman has said in the past few minutes, saying he does not expect the Chancellor or the Prime Minister to issue a response to the falling pound, as they do not comment on market movements or currency movements in that way, but saying that the UK was investing in its future through the growth plan while remaining fiscally responsible and committed to driving down debt in the medium term. Justin, hopefully we can hear you a little clearer now. I think we're sorted. The problem on this growth issue, the OECD, very highly regarded across the world, have said they expect actually the UK economy to flatline next year.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a view, I think, of an increasing number of people. Where does the growth come from? Now, obviously, this so-called mini budget, but if that's a mini one, what on earth is a maxi one? Looked like there was enough in it. But certainly the impact of this is actually hitting this issue of confidence. Remember, this is all borrowed money we're talking about. And the markets are already telling the government, look, we've gone from under 1% on the 10-year bond to pretty close to 4%, which means that actually this is going to be expensive. Now, people still trust Britain as a country to invest in. We've never defaulted, unlike most countries around the world. Even some American states have defaulted. But what they're saying is, yes, we will give you money, but not at that rate. It's going to be more expensive. And again, just have a look at the amount we'll be paying for our overdraft interest, our borrowing charge. It was, a couple of years back, about 50 billion a year, which is roughly the defence budget. This year, it's more likely to be closer to 100 billion a year, which is the equivalent of the entire education budget. And so there comes a stage when you go back to the markets, and the market's saying, you're looking saturated. If this is a money tree, I can't see many leaves left on it, I'm afraid. What the market is now looking for is, right, okay, you could want to borrow this money. What are we actually going to see some tangible proof that progress is going to be made? And that's going to be very difficult when a global economy, which was growing at about 5%, that's the average, now down to 2.5%, and there we are trying to actually boost it the other way. We can't operate this alone. So hence the lack of credibility at the moment, because they're coming out with bold moves, and we all like the bold moves.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this is a global issue, not just a British one.
And of course, the other issue is the Bank of England has got to maintain its credibility in terms of setting interest rates, and that's one of the mechanisms to actually try and raise the value of the pound. But Sir John Geeve, who's the Deputy Governor, this morning saying, look, part of the independence of the Bank of England was that we had these regular monthly meetings of the Monetary Policy Committee, cool, calm and collected, and indicating if perhaps they have to have an emergency meeting and look at raising rates perhaps this week or announcing that again could spook the markets.
It could indeed, and you have sort of shades here of times gone by when we got kicked out of the ERM all those years ago, and the market took that very badly indeed. So yes, they need to actually make sure that they are in control of this. No one's panicking. But on the other hand, when you see the pound dollar reaches almost a parity, we've never been at that stage before. That does mean that actually, yes, there are emergency meetings taking place, and the market will want to hear something later in the week to say, actually, this is what we're doing. We can afford to do this, and it's safe in our hands. They need that sort of comfort at the moment because the Bank of England's losing credibility on it. Their ability to actually control inflation is going to be difficult with a falling pound, and so it's quite likely we will see some rate rise, which again puts pressure on the market in terms of companies themselves investing, new investors coming into the country. They get put off by all of that, and we need that sort of structure to get more in. And remember, just to leave that aside, we've still got the energy crisis where those smaller businesses, okay, it's been frozen, but haven't got a cap on it yet. They need to know exactly what the forward planning is for them. And they're our largest employer. So that needs action, well, sooner rather than later.
Yep. As ever, Justin, thanks for your incisive analysis. Thank you for joining us once more. So all this, of course, being analysed in Liverpool as they crunch the numbers. Let's get back up there now and join Gloria once more.
Well, joining me now, Mark, is a Labour MP who last year felt unable to attend conference. She was made to feel unwelcome because of her view on women's-only spaces. Rosie Duffield is the Member of Parliament for Canterbury, and she's here, and she joins me.
Hi, Gloria.
Rosie, just remind people, because it was quite a big hoo-ha about whether or not you felt safe enough to attend last year's Labour Party conference as a Labour MP. Just remind us about that.
I mean, I really didn't want to fuss. I wanted to quietly not come to conference. I'd had quite a few threats and people, openly saying that they were going to be hostile and aggressive. And I thought the best thing was to stay under the radar, not detract from Keir's first speech as leader. And unfortunately, it got leaked to the press and there was a great big fuss. And it went on. I think the story carried on for about a month. So it dominated everything, which is not what I wanted. But
you are here now. I think have you just arrived today?
Yeah.
And you're coming to speak to us. We're very pleased that you are. Is it now a safe space for you at this conference?
It feels safer. I know Liverpool. I'm comfortable here. I've got lots of friends around, and I've also got a staffer, and that helps. I mean, I'm still walking around with someone all the time, but I don't feel that threat is the same as it was.
So you're walking around this conference, your own party conference, with somebody all the time. It's not just, but is that your researcher or?
Yeah, someone from my office will be with me, or a friend will be with me all the time.
Right. So you feel that you don't want to be alone?
I think it wouldn't be a good idea to provoke anything, just in case.
Tell me whether the debate, which has split opinion in the Labour Party on women-only spaces, trans rights, how is that debate progressing? Just outline your position in this debate first.
Okay, well, my position is the same, that trans rights are human rights, everyone's rights are human rights, but women's spaces don't need to make way for any other group. We need our privacy, we need to be protected, we need women's only services. And if we can't talk about those things without being called transphobes or being cancelled or threatened, then that's a really sad state of affairs. And I do feel that the party is moving where we can have those discussions. More Labour women are talking out about it. I'm not the only one anymore, and more people in the Lords are talking, more peers as well. So we're having those conversations, which is a lot better than we were last year.
J.K. Rowling, who I know you are working with on the issue of women-only spaces. I mean, she has come in for an enormous amount of flack, like you have.
Yeah.
Do you ever think, do you know what? It's not worth it.
Sometimes you sort of think, why did I? But once the genie is out of the bottle, that's it. No matter what you actually say, and if people listen to the words that I've said, there's nothing transphobic ever, because I'm not one. So you can be labelled something that you're not, but if someone actually listens to what I've said and what Joe has said, they'll realise that we want everyone to feel included, but that doesn't mean giving away our spaces or our rights.
What kind of abuse have you been subject to, and is it online? And when you have raised it with whatever platform, has it been helpful?
There's a lot of abuse online. I get DMs, but not as badly as I did used to get them. Direct messages, sorry, yeah. And but on Twitter, there's a whole world. You just don't go there, and the block function is great. But yeah, in person sometimes. Certainly, lots of my friends have had people sort of in their face. Often. Men dressed up in balaclavas, that kind of thing. And it's quite scary and aggressive, yeah. If you go to a meeting, a women's only meeting, or a discussion of women's safe spaces, you will have to alert the police, and there's normally some kind of gang outside in, balaclavas.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you got any more of those meetings planned?
Yes, one tonight actually. But we can't stop them. We can't not do that. And if you look at the women in Iran, they've got it a lot worse. They've got the state actually threatening them. So we can deal with a few, people that are really hostile.
So you're having a meeting on the conference fringe?
Yeah. This evening, me and a few other MPs are going to go, but again, it has to be kept secret till the very last minute.
It's not been advertised. It's not in the Fringe guide.
I think it's in the guide,
right,
but
not
the actual
location.
venue can't be published. No.
How do you get people along to that? But I mean, you might not be able to tell me.
There's enough women who will be there. In fact, it's got a waiting list.
You have your own network of people.
Yeah, we have to be really careful. We have to tell the police. We have to have our own security wherever we meet. Yeah.
Rosie Duffield, we are very passionate on this channel about free speech, and that people should, of whatever view, should be heard with respect. It's good to see you back at conference. Thanks for being
Thanks for having me.
Mark, back to you, or am I throwing indeed to a break? My goodness, it's been frenetic. After the break, we will be getting the latest political scoop from political editor Darren McCaffrey at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Before that, it is time for your weather.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Paul.
Welcome back to GB Newsday. Let's break away from Labour in Liverpool to talk about Liz Truss, the Prime Minister in London, because she's facing pressure from her cabinet colleagues to impose a cap on net migration, amid growing criticism of her proposals to relax border controls. Well, the Prime Minister wants to overhaul the visa system to address labour shortages, attract talent and, as she said, improve economic growth. But several cabinet ministers, including Suella Braverman and the Home Secretary and Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Business Secretary, said to have significant concerns, as they say. Well, we're joined now by political commentator and journalist Benedict Spence. Benedict, thanks for joining us. I guess the other thing is it's Therese Coffey as well when she's talking about the NHS, saying how much they needed to get extra labour in. But it's sort of proving a bit difficult to actually sell it to the entire cabinet, it seems.
Yes, it is. Immigration, of course, is that very sticky thing where, you've got different swathes of different parties are sort of very pro it or very against it. Now, I can understand why in the short term, with the economy on its knees and the NHS being a very good example of that, certain sectors needing staffing, short-term immigration can provide a real, a boost to a flailing economy. But politically speaking, it's not going to be very popular, certainly with a lot of I suppose the electorate that Boris Johnson was able to win over from the Labour Party. A lot of their votes for Brexit were centred at least in part around immigration and the perceived lack of limit on it, and alongside that, the lack of investment in things like basic services. That was what in part led to Brexit, and that was what led to those voters leaving the Labour Party, moving over to Boris Johnson. Now, in many ways, Liz Truss is very different economically from Boris Johnson. So there are already fears as to whether or not she can keep a hold of those voters as a result of that. But on the issue of immigration, if you have a Prime Minister who's saying, I'm going to open the door, I'm going to make it easier for lots of people to come in, whilst at the same time you have the optics of tens of thousands of people crossing the channel illegally and very little seemingly being done about that. And you also then have the optics of different ethnic groups, different religious groups clashing in different parts of the country. We've had the sectarian violence between Hindus and Sunni Muslims in the Midlands and the north of England. And then this weekend we had between Pakistani Shias and anti-Iranian protesters in Marble Arch in London. You can see why it is a real difficult sell for the electorate, and therefore why many members of the cabinet and the Tory party in general, who might have an eye on their seats in 18 months' time, might be thinking this is not something that I can realistically sell to my constituents.
And strategically as well, it might be a bit of a gift to Labour, of course, where with one hand you're trying to jet people off to Rwanda, and on the other hand, welcoming Matt for people who may have certain economic skills.
It speaks to the fact that the Conservative Party does not have a lot of joined-up thinking on this, that it's prepared to come up with these schemes like the Rwanda one that can potentially be held up by international law and lobbyists and all kinds of things, but at the same time be saying, yes, as long as you have the right skills, you can come on in. What are those skills? Well, it's not entirely important right now. We just need skilled people. Oh, and by the way, we have tens of thousands of people arriving illegally who we are doing very little to deport. I think that's the key thing, is that those who are coming here illegally are not readily deported. They do cost the taxpayer a fortune to put up in hotels.
Yeah.
They have to go into hotels because we aren't building enough houses. That's part of what's contributing to the economic problems of this country. So as you can see, yes, as you say, Labour, this is a gift to Labour, but also because people who vote for the Labour Party and are pro-immigration will never be swayed over to the Conservatives by Liz Truss going, I'm pro-immigration. That's not the way that constituency within the Labour Party works. So it means that they no longer have to make that argument. Anti-immigration voters will be angry with Liz Truss, and their own voters won't care.
There is a problem, however, when they're talking about growth in the economy. At the moment, it seems there isn't the labour force to actually bring that about fully.
Yes, and I think one of the things with the idea of taking back control on Brexit was the idea that you would sort of renationalize is the wrong word. You'd bring back lots of industry. You wouldn't be sort of outsourcing things that we have done for a very long time. And that involves both industry. We buy more things from abroad than we used to. We don't make very many things. But also we basically import people that other countries have paid to train up to work in certain industries. And that's a little bit sly. I don't think that that's a particularly fair thing. But that's sort of, by the by. It's Liz Truss has a very short window in which to kickstart the economy. She cannot sit here and go, I'm going to have a revolution in industry in this country, and I'm going to put more money into upskilling people, into retraining people, into fixing the education sector. She's got 18 months. She can't wait for that. And as much as that's what many people wanted, I think, with Brexit, for deindustrialized zones and places where there is generational systemic unemployment.
Oh, I think we've lost the link there. Apologies, Benedict was in full flow, but I think we got the gist of what he was saying. Apologies for that. Let's just remind you back to Liverpool in a moment for the latest on the Labour Party conference, but now an update on the news headlines with Rosie.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 2:33. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. We start with some breaking news on the death of Harry Dunn, the 19-year-old who was killed whilst riding his motorbike in August 2019. The Crown Prosecution Service has now confirmed the case against the American citizen Anne Sekulas, who's accused of dangerous driving. That case will be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday. It's alleged she was driving a car which hit his motorbike. She left the country claiming diplomatic immunity. The Shadow Chancellor is accusing the government of putting the economy in danger. Rachel Reeves says the UK is facing a national emergency, with the pound hitting a record low against the dollar this morning after the Chancellor announced his plans to cut taxes. Addressing the Labour Party conference, she outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she says helps high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
The South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angry by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming high running costs, the owner, Peel Group, says they'll cease operations at the end of next month. The Mayor, Oliver Coppard, criticised the company for turning down an offer of financial help. He's appealing for the group to reconsider and says he'll seek government intervention. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a moment.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome to GB Newsday. We are broadcasting live from the Labour Party conference on a massive economic day, not just for Labour, but for the country too. I'm joined now to discuss this by Labour Party member, but also the left-wing economic journalist, Paul Mason. Paul, big day at the Labour Party conference. We've heard from Rachel Reeves. She says the party wants to be pro-worker and pro-business. Does that analysis stack up for you?
I'm immensely encouraged by being here, and many of us are. I'm on the left of this party, but what I saw today was a politician from the other wing of it, Rachel Reeves, basically deliver what I've been looking for, which is the idea that we're going to raise wages. She promised to raise the minimum wage and thereby every other wage. We're going to double the number of medical students trained. We're going to build 4 new steelworks. And she said, you'll see the scaffolding and the cranes go up in towns where you've never seen scaffolding and cranes for decades. The northern towns like where I come from, where you used to represent. So, look, the way you be pro-worker and pro-business at the same time is to channel investment towards a social goal. And what Labour's goal is the decarbonisation of this economy. The electricity system won't be burning gas, oil or coal by 2030. We've had that in writing from Labour. So, yeah, I'm immensely pleased with what I'm hearing. And that's why you're seeing people like me, who've been on the left of the party, very, very enthusiastic about Keir Starmer's leadership and the possibility of Keir as Prime Minister.
What would you like him to say tomorrow? What would please the left of the party? It sounds like you're falling into line.
Well, look, I was part of Keir Starmer's leadership campaign because...
And a lot of the left were upset with you about that, weren't they?
Some were, but in the end, the reason why I wanted that to happen is because I thought Keir was the kind of person who could build a big tent. And we're going to have an argument this afternoon about changing the voting system to PR.
Isn't that a bit wild, given that people are worrying about their energy bills?
People are absolutely right to be focusing on the energy bills, absolutely. But the present system has allowed us to have 4 different kinds of conservatism in as many years. I've got jam in my fridge that's older than the last 2 Conservative governments, and I would like to see British democracy revived a bit. I think many of the people who are watching this will middle of the afternoon thinking, what's the relevance? The relevance is every time you have that sinking feeling, politics doesn't represent me, politics isn't for me. One of the reasons for that is so few people's votes actually matter. So we're going to have an argument today about whether we want PR. I'm in
Keir
favour.
Starmer says that he'll ignore it anyway, even if conference does pass.
He can, but let's understand why it's important. We might not win the next election. We might become the largest party, but we might not win. And in that situation, you're in a coalition government. All the other people who might want coalitions with us will want PR. So I think it's even if he says I'm not interested in now, it is important for me anyway to say the way we elected Andy Burnham, the way we elected Mark Drakeford to run Wales is a good way, and I think we could be doing more of it.
You talked about energy prices now, and you backed Keir Starmer, and of course when he stood to be Labour leader, he said we'll nationalise it. Nationalisation doesn't seem to be on the Labour Party agenda anymore. Is that difficult for you?
I know, because I was in the room when this was written, that what he actually said was common ownership. There is Welsh Water is right now a mutual. It's commonly owned. Cooperatives can be common forms of common ownership. Look, I think I would prefer for Labour to be honouring those commitments, but in order. There's an urgent and there's an important. What's urgent and important is the energy system. We're going to need to direct the energy system. Our own government is spending, we don't exactly know how much, but it will spend hundreds of millions right now to bail out energy companies who can't, whose cash flow puts them in danger of falling over. So I think the energy nationalisation story is one that I think will develop and unfold as the crisis unfolds.
Okay.
People like me would like him to go further, but what I heard this morning in terms of an offer to the British people, an offer to the people who watch this programme, who may have voted Tory, there's an alternative universe in which Rishi Sunak is Prime Minister, in which the pound is still worth $1.15, and the rest of the world is not laughing at our misfortune. But we have a Tory government that I think has torpedoed our currency, and we need competent government. And I would say to the people who watch this programme, out of political choice, you're going to get that from us.
Okay. Paul, you have had an incredibly successful broadcasting career. You have written books. Why on earth are you trying to get selected to be a Labour MP?
Well, unsuccessfully so far, it has to be said, so don't panic. The books might still be my only source of income. Look, the reason is because from the left, I've been frankly disappointed by some of my colleagues not engaging with the idea we're all in the same boat, we want to row in the same direction. There's catcalling and name-calling of Keir Starmer, but more important than anything else, over Ukraine. I and many of my left colleagues have worked overtime. I was in Kiev until 36 hours before the bombs fell, building solidarity with Ukrainian workers, from British workers. And I want to see more people in Parliament for Labour who take that kind of stuff seriously, and not people who are basically acting as cheerleaders or apologists for this totalitarian dictatorship. For me, that has become the existential problem of Britain, and we see it now. Putin threatening to nuke our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. I want more MPs in Parliament who care about that and are expert in it. And as you say, I've been a journalist who's covered defence, security, stood under the bombardment in Gaza. It's not a pleasant thing. I know what wars look like. I want to stop them. We stop them in this country and in this system by being strong and presented a united front. And that's really what's made me do it. I may fail, but even by failing, you can change a debate sometimes.
Okay, well, we always try and balance the debate, and it's really good to get a left-wing perspective on the show today. It's always good to get different perspectives on things. So, Paul Mason, thank you.
A pleasure.
It's been great to chat to you. Mark, back to you.
Gloria, thank you. And to Paul as well, of course. Let's reflect. We've been bringing you the latest coverage of the party conference with Gloria and the team throughout the day. Now, this morning, just to remind you, the Shadow Chancellor speaking to delegates, criticising the government's management of the economy, claiming Labour could be the more responsible party with the nation's finances. To remind you, said that they were gambling with your money. They're out of control. Let's speak to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's been at the conference. And Darren, the assessment may be shared, it seems, by the currency and the bond markets as well. I think we can get to Darren, who's in Liverpool, if he can hear us. Let's, or can we get back to Gloria? I think we're just trying to get communication there with Liverpool. Gloria, are you still with us? So we were trying to speak to Darren,
as is Darren.
Right.
Darren is ready. We'll just do another test with Darren.
OK, Darren, can you hear me?
Yes, Darren is good to go.
OK. Let's just bowl this to both of you, of course. That we heard Rachel Reeves talking about gambling with your money, they're out of control. I was just saying, Darren, that's an assessment that it seems is being shared now by the currency markets and the bond markets.
Yeah, indeed. There's no doubt that Labour have now got a pretty strong, straightforward message when it comes to the economy, as they would see it. They would say you only have to look at the evidence of what has played out over the last 24, 48 hours or so with that slide in sterling, with clearly jitters in the markets, with the increased cost of borrowing. And Labour's argument is pretty clear that they have a stronger case now with the British public, that they can manage the public finances and manage the economy in a more sensible way. Now, clearly the government would argue that these are just jitters, that things will even out, that they're having to take some bold and difficult decisions in the short term to try and get the British economy back to growth. But yes, you go around the Labour Party conference, I'm sure Gloria agrees with me, you talk to people here, and I've been going to Labour Party conference for years and years and years and years, too many years to remember, and there is a buoyancy here, there is a sense of hope, there is a sense almost of expectation that Labour is in a pretty good position when it comes to those opinion polls, when it comes to their opposition to the government, that they could well have a pretty good shot at government in, 18 months, 2 years' time, depending when the election is called. So I think the mood here at Labour has not been as high, really, since, I would say, since Tony Blair was Prime Minister, and that's a long time ago. There is a sense that Labour is making inroads now into public support.
And it's interesting that you talk about Blair. Peter Mandelson, one of those who's actually reflected that perhaps the party has moved sufficiently across to the centre ground that it may attract many voters who perhaps haven't been attracted by Labour policies for many years. Is there still, though, that tension with the remnants of momentum on the left that they don't want to see that movement to the centre ground?
There is, but I did see Lord Mandelson a little bit earlier on. He was in the hall listening to Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor speech, a little earlier on today. And we know that him, for example, and Tony Blair have been working with Keir Starmer's campaign and leadership in the background over the last couple of years or so. Are there fringes within the Labour Party who don't like Keir Starmer? Of course there are. They don't like necessarily some of the policies he's pursuing. They don't like, for example, that they were singing the national anthem here on Sunday. But they very much are on the fringes of this conference. In fact, actually, I don't know if anyone or many people have been to party conferences. As you can probably tell from the background, there's lots of different stalls, lots of different organisations literally put out their stall in order to talk to politicians and to the members that have gathered here. And lots of the left-wing kind of hardcore group of supporters, they're literally on the fringes, in the corner of the hall, physically on the corner of the hall. And I think that's a sign of their current presence within the Labour Party. Yes, they're here, they are present, but they're certainly not in control or indeed having their voices very well heard at this party conference, I would suggest.
Just one last thought about setting out the stall. Looking at what Rachel Reeves said this morning, I mean, Gloria's mentioned there wasn't an awful lot of detail. They did talk about this national wealth fund, similar to perhaps a sovereign wealth fund, but only talking perhaps about 8 billion. That's not going to really buy an awful lot of infrastructure.
No, I think there's real concern within the Labour Party, and we don't know where we're going to be, but it is possible We know the government's taking a bit of a gamble with the nation's finances. They may not admit it, but essentially they are. Where is the money going to be? Where is the money going to come from for public spending over the next couple of years? The suggestions the government may well start cutting back on that. And this is a problem for the Labour Party. While today they suggested they're going to restore that top rate of tax back to 45 pence, that really doesn't generate that much money. It's only about £4 billion in total. In fact, actually, the tax cut may, conversely, actually generate more money. And a big question for Labour going forward, given the fact today that Rachel Reeves ruled out austerity altogether, if the public finances are in a bad state, if they get into government, where are they going to find that money from? Are they prepared potentially to put up taxes? And that's a really difficult discussion that Labour may well have to face, or at least be challenged on, in the weeks and months to come.
And we've got Keir Starmer tomorrow. What's going to be the big idea? What's going to be the big carrot to get them that general election victory?
Well, really interesting. If I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be sitting somewhere else, I'm sure. I think there's going to be two key things to it. First of all, there is going to be an announcement on further announcement on energy prices. We know that Labour, for example, have only committed to the energy price freeze for 6 months, which essentially takes us up to April of next year. The government have gone much further. They're going to freeze the energy cap for 2 years. So I suspect we'll have an announcement on energy and the cost of living crisis. But I think the main thread of the speech now, and it may well have had to be rewritten several times since last Friday, will be on the economy and what Labour's prepared to do. And there will be that line. I think this is like Labour's constantly trying to draw now, and will do, at this line that they are there for the middle and low income earners. And we got a little bit of a hint about that today from Rachel Reeves, suggesting that she would use some of that extra tax revenue from the top rate of tax, if it comes in, to help fund better wages for nurses, doctors, teachers, etc. And we may well hear a lot more about that from Keir Starmer tomorrow, wanting constantly to present this image that the Conservative Party is now for those top earners, whereas Labour will work on behalf of those on middle and lower incomes.
Yeah, so there's this undertaking from Rachel Reeves at the 45 pence, that the top rate, the higher rate, would come back in. But, I mean, is that actually part of the assessment there, that actually they don't have to do too much if there's going to be these problems in terms of the pound, the bond market, interest rates bedeviling the Tories, that actually Labour can sit back on the sidelines and just watch them implode?
Yeah, there is an argument, certainly within the Labour Party, that it should be steady as you go. I mean, Labour's 10 points ahead in the opinion polls. There is a narrative that, you know, in politics, where governments lose elections, oppositions don't win them. And there will be strategists within the party insisting to Keir Starmer and others, actually don't rock the boat. Just set out that narrative that I've just done in the last part of my answer, of trying to draw that line, that big difference, that ideological difference between the Conservatives and Labour. You do not need to spell out policy detail, particularly this far out from a general election. You simply need to set a narrative for what you want to do in government. And I think that is the strategy that Labour will pursue. So when we talk about Rachel Reeves not really having that many policy details today, or indeed what we might well hear from Keir Starmer tomorrow, some would argue Labour don't need to do that. They just need to sit back, let the government do what they want to do, and fundamentally just set out a story of what they would change about Britain.
OK, Darren, thank you for that. We'll let you sit back for the moment, at least. Back to you in Liverpool a little later, of course. Thanks for that. Well, indeed, if Labour is to beat the Tories at the next general election, it will need to win those traditional red wall seats, which were won by Boris Johnson's Conservatives at the last election. Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis is at one of those constituencies, Ashfield, and has been speaking to voters there to find out what they think. What's been their reaction, Will?
Yes, well, the reaction today is that people say that they want something that's fairer for working people. They want something that does more for the working man. And just before Rachel Reeves did get onto that stage and made her speech, I spoke to a few of the people here at this Idlewells market here in Sutton in Ashfield about what would make them go back to voting for Labour.
I've been a Labour man all my life till the last time. I thought, give these a chance to get the Tories in, but say confidence-wise, I'm rock bottom.
No matter who you vote for, nothing gets altered. We've tried Labour, we've tried Liberals, we've tried everybody, and then they all get in the same boat. We don't get no done.
I'm from a mining family originally, and we always voted in Labour until this past time, and then we voted Conservative. but I don't think I would vote for a Conservative anymore.
I voted Labour in the past. I voted Independence last time because I thought they was doing a good job on the council. But I've since changed my mind on that as well. So I sort of go, if there's an election, it might take me a day to decide who I'm going to vote for.
Yes, well, this is the heart of Ashfield. It's also the former Labour heartlands. It seems from people that I've been speaking to, people are ready to look back at voting Labour again. They're not very confident in the tax cuts that they've been seeing, particularly on Friday in that mini budget. And from the people that I think I've been speaking to, they are ready to go back. But whether the things they've been hearing today from Rachel Reeves are the fairer Britain that she's been talking about, we will have to wait and see.
Will, thanks very much indeed for updating us there, and more, of course, reaction throughout the afternoon, and more news from Liverpool, of course, as we continue our coverage of the Labour Party conference at Liverpool and what's happening with the pound, what's happening with interest rates. We'll have all that for you here on GB News. That's it from us for the moment. Patrick will be next with GB News live from Liverpool. But let's get an update now on the weather.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather updates. A mixture of sunshine and showers today, but it is pretty fresh out there. A cold wind coming in from the north. That's been developing through the night thanks to a big area of low pressure. The wind's swinging in and pushing away this weather front. And as I say, bringing that chilly feel, but also bringing a mixture of sunshine and showers. The showers plentiful across northern Scotland. We'll also continue to see some coming in across parts of North Wales, drifting down into the Midlands, perhaps one or two getting to the southeast. Southwest England seeing a scattering of showers as well, and also along the east coast. Many other areas, though, in between, not seeing many showers at all and staying largely dry and bright. But even when the sun's out, it is not warm. Temperatures a touch below average, and it feels colder, particularly if you're exposed to that northerly wind, which will continue to blow through the evening and overnight and continue to bring a sprinkling of showers down, particularly through the Irish Sea into Liverpool Bay area, across much of Wales and parts of southwest England, the more eastern parts of Northern Ireland and northern Scotland. Again, down the eastern side, not too many showers, many places dry. That breeze helping to keep the temperatures up, but still getting well down into single figures in the countryside and feeling very fresh once more on Tuesday morning. A whole host of showers at this stage coming into parts of northwest England, North Wales, and some of them will filter down into the Midlands, the odd one getting into East Anglia and the southeast. Plenty of showers across northern Scotland. Thicker cloud across Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall. Could be quite a damp afternoon across Cornwall in particular, with persistent rain here. Again, temperatures below average and feeling cooler with the wind, although the wind's perhaps easing a touch tomorrow compared to today, but still feeding in some showers into parts of North Wales. We'll see a few more getting into the eastern side as we head into Wednesday morning. The rain in the southwest also becoming a little more extensive overnight before clearing away on Wednesday. Sunny spells and a few showers Wednesday, Thursday. Could see some wet and windy weather swing across on Friday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello and welcome to GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's, until 6 o'clock this evening. Now, as you can see, I am live from the Labour Party conference right here in Liverpool. I've got loads to get our teeth stuck into today as well. Coming up this hour, earlier today, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves set out plans for a new national wealth fund to invest over £8 billion into projects, green projects, right here in the UK to boost British manufacturing and business as well. She also promised to bring back the top rate of income tax, something the Conservative government scrapped in their mini budget, not so mini budget, just last week. But can the Labour Party really build British industry? We're going to be having big debates on that. Is it time to bring back British? Anyway, away from Liverpool, on the blue side of the House of Commons, the new Prime Minister isn't backing British, but foreign workers instead. I know this is going to get you lot very hot under the collar. We did think that maybe Truss would slash immigration numbers. It appears that maybe it's going to go the other way. Liz Truss is reported to be prepared to increase immigration to fill job vacancies and boost economic growth, allowing more migrants to enter the UK. How do you feel about that? GB Views at gbnews.uk. And is now the time for a softening of immigration rules, really? Protesters have clashed with police officers during demonstrations outside the Iranian embassy in London. Is this just another case of more imported problems into Britain? The Met Police said members of the crowd threw missiles at officers and breached police lines yesterday afternoon. It comes as protests in Iran spread across the world. We'll have the latest with our home and security editor, Mark White. But before all of that, it's time for your latest headlines.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 2 minutes past 3. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Shadow Chancellor has been accusing the government of putting the economy in danger. Rachel Reeves says the UK is facing a national emergency, with the pound hitting a record low against the dollar this morning after the Chancellor announced his plan to cut taxes. Addressing the Labour Party conference, she outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she says helps high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
Well, reacting to that speech, the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Lisa Nandy told us that Labour will invest in the many, not the few.
The Tories think that you can grow the economy and build a country by the few, for the few. We think all people and all places have to contribute to the country's success, and all people should have a stake. That's why we're promising to invest to get good jobs, clean energy jobs, back into coastal and industrial towns, so that we can get money back into people's pockets.
Well, defending the government's economic plan, the Work and Pensions Secretary, Chloe Smith, told GB News growing the economy will take time.
What you saw in the growth package from the Chancellor last Friday is a really bold and ambitious plan that is all about growth, and I think that's exactly right. And for me, in my particular role, what I'm most focused on is using all of those levers to help people into jobs, and that, I think, is what we all want to see.
In some other news now, the case against an American accused of killing Harry Dunn will be heard for the first time since his death 3 years ago. Ansar Koulas is charged with causing the teenager's death by dangerous driving following a collision outside of a US military base in Northamptonshire. It's alleged she was driving a car which hit his motorbike, but she left the country 19 days later, claiming diplomatic immunity. The case will be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday. It's not clear whether she needs to appear. The South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angry by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming running high costs, the owner, Peel Group, says it will cease operations at the end of next month. The Mayor, Oliver Coppard, criticised the company for turning down an offer of financial help. He's appealing for the group to reconsider and says he'll seek government intervention. At least 5 police officers were seriously injured and 12 people were arrested following unrest near the Iranian embassy in London. Rival groups clashed at a protest calling for an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran last night. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died in custody in Tehran after being arrested for not completely covering her hair. Shiva Mabobi is a spokesperson for the campaign to free political prisoners in Iran. She says it's time for change.
It is a government that people has never wanted this government. So that's really important. It will change. The regime will be overthrown, but no revolution has happened overnight. I think the point is now that people are putting their life in danger and they're saying we had enough, this time we have to end it and finish it. And we never ever had this type of support around the world from an individual.
Electric car owners have been hit by a 42% rise in the cost of using public rapid charge points in just 4 months. The RAC says it's now nearly £10 more expensive to rapid charge a family-sized electric car, up to 80%. The motoring body's survey of over 12,000 drivers suggests that rising energy prices are influencing many people's decisions when it comes to which car to buy. NASA will crash a probe into an asteroid later to test its capabilities. While the space rock being targeted isn't a threat to Earth, the DART, or the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, hopes to see if it could prevent any cosmic doomsday collision. It's the first ever attempt to do so using kinetic impact. The probe lifted off in November last year and has been travelling towards the asteroid ever since. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, let's head back to Liverpool with Patrick.
Yes, hello everybody, welcome to Liverpool. Well, I'll be bringing you all of the latest coverage live from the Labour Party conference. And earlier this afternoon, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves gave a speech to delegates criticising the concepts of trickle-down economics. It sounded a little bit like Joe Biden if you ask me, but saying that it had been a failure in the past.
And in turn, that means the cost of borrowing for working people will now go up too, with higher mortgage repayments for families. And all for what? Not to invest in the industries of the future, not for our NHS, and not for our schools, but for tax cuts for the wealthiest. A return to trickle-down economics, an idea that has been tried, has been tested, and has failed.
Yes, so that's been some of the big political news of the day. We've got loads more coming your way on a variety of other topics as well. But I am here in Liverpool at the conference centre, and there's loads going on. There's a tractor over there. I've seen a stall for the Faroe Islands, the Falkland Islands. I had a free platter of fish and chips. But I think, realistically, political editor Darren McCaffrey, the big news of the day was not how much I've been gorging myself on freebies. It's been what Rachel Reeves had to say.
Yeah, indeed. And so what Labour are trying to do, essentially, this party conference, is in many ways not rock the boat, but try and set up this rather consistent and clear narrative about the difference now between the government and the Labour Party. And that is why we heard Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor today, suggesting that they would bring back this top rate of tax back up to 45 pence, that they feel that this trickle-down economics is not the way forward. Rachel Reeves' argument has been tried and tested a million times. It's not really worked. It's a bad idea. And the narrative they want to sell to the country is that we are on the side of middle and low-income earners. The government is on the side of those that earn a lot of money. And in terms of policy detail, yeah, there were bits